The universe operates on principles we understand: physics, chemistry, the fundamental laws of cause and effect. But in the depths of space, near the Bajoran wormhole where gods are real and prophecy intersects with quantum mechanics, those principles become negotiable. When something emerges from the celestial temple that even the prophets cannot fully explain, the question isn't what it is, but what it will become. The Bajoran transport vessel Carina's light detected the escape pod 17 kilometers from the wormhole's event horizon, tumbling in a decaying orbit that would send it into the Denorio's belt within hours. Captain Neres reported it immediately to Deep Space Nine. Single occupant, life signs weak and erratic, no distress beacon, no identification transponder. In the third year of the Dominion War, anything unidentified near the wormhole was a potential threat. Chief Miles O'Brien beamed the pod directly into Cargo Bay 5, which had been cleared and secured per wartime protocols. Security Chief Odo stood ready with a phaser rifle team, his shapeshifter senses already probing for any hint of founder infiltration. When the pod's hatch opened with a hiss of escaping atmosphere, they found a humanoid male, unconscious, wearing simple Bajoran civilian clothing that looked like it had been replicated in haste. "Tricorder readings, Doctor?" Odo asked without taking his eyes off the stranger. Dr. Julian Bashir knelt beside the unconscious figure, medical tricorder humming. His genetically enhanced mind processed the data streams with superhuman speed, and what he saw made his enhanced cognitive abilities stumble over contradictions. This is extraordinary. His cellular structure is unlike anything in the Federation database. The readings keep fluctuating. One moment he appears humanoid, the next the tricorder registers him as something else entirely. His DNA has a triple helix structure I've never encountered, and his cells are absorbing ambient radiation at impossible rates. The stranger was tall, powerfully built despite appearing malnourished, with dark hair and features that seemed generically humanoid, almost too perfect, as if designed to appear non-threatening. His skin had an odd pallor, like someone who'd been deprived of sunlight for months. When Bashir checked his vital signs manually, the pulse was weak, thready, barely sustaining life. Could he be a founder? Lieutenant Commander Jadzia Dax asked from the doorway, her trill spots marking her as one of the few beings on the station who could potentially detect shapeshifter deception. Odo moved closer, his face impassive but his entire being focused on the unconscious stranger. As a changeling himself, he could sense his own kind through methods the solids could never fully understand, a recognition that transcended physical form. He concentrated, reaching out with senses that operated on quantum levels, searching for the telltale signature of the link, the Gestalt consciousness that connected all founders. Nothing. Yet also, not nothing. "He's not a founder," Odo said slowly, uncertainty creeping into his voice for the first time in recent memory. "But my senses are telling me he should be. It's as if his biology is mimicking changeling physiology without actually being one. I've never encountered anything like this. Get him to the infirmary." Commander Benjamin Sisko's voice came through Odo's comm badge, the station commander having monitored the recovery operation from ops. "Full quarantine protocols. No one goes in or out without my authorization. Odo, I want you to observe personally. If there's even a chance this is a new Dominion infiltration technique." "Understood, Captain." Odo gestured to the security team. "Carefully. We don't know what we're dealing with." In the infirmary's isolation ward behind force fields and under constant surveillance, the stranger remained unconscious for 18 hours. Bashir ran every test available to Federation medicine, and each result deepened the mystery. The man's cellular structure suggested he should possess abilities far beyond normal humanoids: dense molecular bonding, enhanced neural pathways, organs that seemed designed for functions Bashir couldn't identify. Yet currently, he was barely clinging to life, as if something fundamental had been stripped away. "It's like looking at a blueprint for a starship with no power core," Bashir explained to Sisko during one of the commander's frequent check-ins. "All the systems are there, perfectly designed, incredibly advanced, but dormant." His cells are trying to activate something, drawing in every form of radiation they can access, but it's not enough. Whatever energy source he's supposed to run on, we don't have it here. Sisko stood on the other side of the force field, arms crossed, studying the unconscious stranger with the tactical mind that had kept DS9 operational through years of crisis. The Dominion War had taught him that appearances meant nothing. Founders could mimic anyone, anything. But this felt different. What about his memory? Any identification, anything that could tell us who he is or where he came from? I've detected unusual neural patterns that suggest memory suppression or damage, Bashir reported. But I won't know more until he wakes up. If he wakes up. His life signs are stabilizing, but barely. Benjamin, whoever or whatever this is, his biology is beyond anything I've encountered. Even beyond what I am. He said the last part quietly, referring to his own illegal genetic enhancements, a secret Sisko had kept, understanding that Bashir's abilities had saved countless lives. When the stranger finally opened his eyes, it was with the sudden gasp of someone breaking the surface after nearly drowning. His eyes, bright blue, startlingly intense, darted around the room with confusion that quickly shifted to controlled panic. He tried to sit up and immediately collapsed back, his body failing to respond to his commands. Easy, Bashir said, stepping closer to the force field but not deactivating it. You're safe. You're in the infirmary on Deep Space Nine. I'm Dr. Julian Bashir. Can you tell me your name? The stranger's eyes focused on Bashir, and behind them was a desperate clarity struggling against confusion. His lips moved, trying to form words. When he finally spoke, his voice was hoarse, damaged. I don't know. Where am I? What happened? Odo materialized beside Bashir, his face set in its usual stern expression. You were found in an escape pod near the Bajoran wormhole. You have no identification, no records, and your biology doesn't match any known species. In the middle of a war, that makes you either a victim or a weapon. Which are you? The stranger stared at Odo, and something flickered in his eyes. Recognition? Fear? I can't remember. My head, it's like trying to see through fog. I know I had a name, I had. He struggled, frustration building in his features. Why can't I remember who I am? Neural trauma, Bashir offered. Possibly induced by whatever brought you here. Your brain shows signs of severe disruption, but it's healing. The question is whether your memories will return. Or whether you're lying. Odo added bluntly. Changelings are masters of deception. A false memory loss would be an excellent cover for infiltration. The stranger's eyes widened. Changelings? What's a changeling? The confusion seemed genuine, but Sisko had learned that authenticity could be manufactured. From the doorway, a new voice cut through the tension. He's not a changeling, Constable. Though I understand your caution. Kaiwinarami swept into the room, her Bajoran religious robes flowing, flanked by two Vedeks. Her presence immediately shifted the atmosphere. The Kai's political power on Bajorans was absolute, and her relationship with Sisko was perpetually strained by conflicting authorities. Eminence, Sisko said carefully. This is a security matter. I'm not sure what brings you to the station. The prophets brought me, Commander. Wynn's voice carried the absolute certainty of religious conviction. 3 days ago, I had a vision. The prophets showed me a being of light falling from the celestial temple, stripped of his radiance, cast into our world to teach us a lesson we have forgotten. When I heard of this stranger's arrival, I knew immediately what he represents. The stranger looked at Wynn with visible confusion. Prophets? Celestial temple? I don't understand any of this. Wynn moved closer to the force field, her eyes studying him with unsettling intensity. You don't remember because you're not meant to. Not yet. The prophets have sent you to us for a purpose, and that purpose will reveal itself in time. But I can tell you this, Commander Sisko, this man is no Dominion spy. He is a gift from the prophets themselves. With respect, Eminence, Odo interjected. The prophets don't typically send gifts that register as potential shapeshifters on our sensors. His biology is triggering every security protocol we have for detecting founder infiltration. Perhaps, Wynn said smoothly. That is precisely the point. To test our faith in times of war. To see if we can still recognize the sacred when it comes in unfamiliar form. She turned to Sisko with political calculation barely masked by piety. The Bajoran people will want to know about this, Commander. They will want to see the prophet sent for themselves. I suggest you consider carefully how you proceed. Sisko felt the familiar weight of impossible decisions settling on his shoulders. A mysterious stranger with unknown biology, potential founder connections, and now religious significance? In the middle of a war where Dominion spies had already nearly destroyed the Federation multiple times. Eminence, until we can verify his identity and ensure he poses no threat, he remains in quarantine. The safety of this station and its inhabitants takes precedence over religious interpretation. Wynn's smile was cold. Of course, Commander. I would expect nothing less from the emissary. Though I wonder how the Bajoran people will react when they learn you're holding a prophet-sent prisoner. She turned to leave, then paused. I'll be on the station for the next several days. I trust you'll inform me when he's allowed visitors. The prophets cannot be delayed indefinitely. After Wynn departed, Sisko exchanged glances with his senior staff. Dax, pull up everything we have on recent wormhole activity. Any anomalies, unusual energy signatures, anything that might explain how an escape pod appeared with no ship of origin. Major Kira, contact your sources in the Bajoran resistance, see if anyone's missing, if this man matches any descriptions of prisoners or refugees. And if he's telling the truth about the memory loss? Bashir asked. Then we help him recover it, Sisko said. But carefully. Very carefully. Because whether he's a prophet sent, a founder spy, or something else entirely, his presence here changes the equation. And in war, changed equations can mean the difference between survival and annihilation. Inside the isolation ward, the stranger lay back on the biobed, his mind churning with fragments that wouldn't coalesce into coherent memory. He knew things, he understood the language they spoke, recognized the concept of space stations and medical equipment. But who he was, where he came from, why his body felt simultaneously powerful and utterly depleted, it was all locked behind walls of fog and pain. Only one thing felt certain, though he couldn't explain why, something was missing. Not just his memories, but something fundamental to his very existence. As if he'd once been able to do something. Something important. Something that might have saved lives. And now, whatever it was gone. The holding cell in DS9's security office was designed for dangerous prisoners. Force fields, duranium walls, constant surveillance. The stranger sat on the bench, head in his hands, trying to force memories through the barrier in his mind. 12 hours had passed since Kaiwin's departure, and his situation had only deteriorated. Odo stood outside the cell, arms crossed, his liquid features arranged in an expression of deep suspicion. I've been the chief of security on this station for years. I've interrogated Cardassian war criminals, Maquis terrorists, and even a few founders. And you know what they all have in common? They all had stories. Backgrounds. Identities. You have nothing. I know, the stranger said quietly, his voice stronger now but laced with frustration. Don't you think I want to remember? Every time I try to grasp something concrete, it slips away. I'll get a flash, a symbol, colors, feelings, but nothing that makes sense. Convenient, Odo replied. Amnesia is the oldest trick in the intelligence playbook. Can't reveal your mission if you claim not to remember it. The stranger looked up, those blue eyes meeting Odo's with something that looked like desperation. Then test me. Use whatever technology you have. If I'm lying, you'll find proof. But I'm telling you the truth, I don't know who I am. Before Odo could respond, the security office door hissed open. Sisko entered, followed by a man neither Odo nor the stranger had seen before. Human, middle-aged, wearing a nondescript civilian suit that somehow screamed Starfleet intelligence. His smile was pleasant, his eyes calculating. "Commander Sisko," the man said, extending a hand. "Luther Sloan, Special Investigations Division. I'm here about your mysterious guest." Sisko's expression remained neutral, but Odo caught the slight tension in his commander's shoulders. "I wasn't aware Starfleet intelligence had been notified." "Oh, we're notified about everything these days, Commander. Dominion War and all that." Sloan moved to the force field, studying the stranger with undisguised interest. "Fascinating. Dr. Bashir's reports don't do him justice. Tell me, do you have a name yet? Or should we just assign you a numerical designation?" The stranger stood, moving to the edge of the force field. Despite his weakened state, there was something in his bearing, a controlled power, a warrior's stance. "I don't know my name. But I know I'm not your enemy." "Everyone says that," Sloan replied cheerfully. "Right up until they detonate a biogenic weapon in your cargo bay. But let's approach this scientifically. You appear humanoid. Your DNA shows a triple helix structure never encountered in any catalogued species. Your cellular biology suggests capabilities that should be impossible. And you conveniently appear near the Wormhole, the single most strategically important location in the Alpha Quadrant, with no memory and no explanation." He turned to Sisko. "Commander, I'm formally requesting custody of the prisoner for transport to Starbase 375 for enhanced interrogation." "Denied," Sisko said immediately. "This station falls under my jurisdiction. Until we determine his threat level, he stays here." Sloan's smile didn't waver. "I was hoping you'd say that. It's so much easier to work here than in a Starbase holding cell." He pulled out a PADD, calling up a holographic display. Dr. Bashir forwarded his preliminary analysis. What he didn't mention, probably because his genetically enhanced brain didn't recognize the significance, is that your guest's cellular structure bears a remarkable similarity to founder physiology. Not identical, but close enough to trigger detection protocols. "I already told them I'm not a changeling," Odo growled. "No, you told them he's not a founder," Sloan corrected. "There's a difference. The founders are shapeshifters from the Gamma Quadrant. But what if there are other shape-shifting species we haven't encountered? Or what if the Dominion has developed a new type of infiltrator specifically designed to fool changeling detection?" The stranger gripped the edge of the force field, his knuckles white. "I'm not a shapeshifter. I can't change form. I don't even know what I can do anymore. Everything feels wrong. Like I'm supposed to be able to do something fundamental, and it's just gone." "Interesting," Sloan murmured, making notes on his PADD. "Psychological dissonance suggesting latent abilities." "Commander, I'd like to run some tests. Nothing invasive yet. But if we're going to determine whether he's a security threat, we need data." Sisko looked at the stranger, weighing options with the burden of command. The Dominion War had already cost millions of lives. One more potential threat, however sympathetic, couldn't be allowed to compromise the station's security. What kind of tests? Cellular response to various stimuli. Electromagnetic resistance. Morphogenic enzyme analysis. And I'd like to expose him to different types of radiation to see if we can activate whatever dormant systems his biology is designed for. Sloan's tone was clinical, detached. If he's truly suffering from power depletion, as Bashir theorized, finding his energy source might restore his memories along with his abilities. Or kill him, Odo pointed out. "There's always that risk," Sloan agreed. "But between potential death and potential Dominion infiltration, I know which one keeps me up at night." "Commander?" Sisko studied the stranger, who stood silent, understanding that his fate was being decided by people who had every reason to distrust him. "Limited testing only. Dr. Bashir supervises all procedures. If there's any sign of danger to the patient or the station, We stop immediately. Fair enough. Sloane turned to the stranger. You should be grateful, actually. If Section 31 had gotten to you first. He stopped, catching himself, but the damage was done. Sisko's eyes narrowed. Section 31? I thought you said you were Special Investigations. Sloane's pleasant expression never changed. Did I? Must have misspoken. You know how it is during wartime. So many different departments. All the acronyms start to blur together. He tapped his PDD. Shall we begin? Time is rather pressing, and the Dominion doesn't wait for bureaucratic approvals. In the infirmary's secure testing bay, Bashir had set up a containment field with sensor arrays surrounding a central platform. The stranger stood in the middle, wearing only basic medical garments, his muscular frame showing signs of atrophy despite its obvious strength. Bashir monitored readings while Sloane observed with predatory interest. Starting with baseline electromagnetic exposure, Bashir announced. Low-frequency EM field, gradually increasing intensity. The field activated with a soft hum. The stranger closed his eyes, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then his breathing changed, becoming deeper, more rhythmic. The cellular scanners showed a spike in activity. His cells were responding, drinking in the energy like parched earth absorbing rain. Increase to medium frequency, Sloane ordered. I'm the doctor here, Bashir said sharply. We proceed at safe intervals. As the frequency climbed, the stranger's body began to react more dramatically. His skin took on a healthier color, the pallor fading. His muscles seemed to fill out slightly, regaining lost mass. The biped monitors showed his vitals strengthening, heart rate stabilizing, neural activity increasing. He's metabolizing the energy, Bashir said with barely concealed fascination. His cells are converting electromagnetic radiation directly into biological energy. I've never seen anything like this efficiency. It's as if his entire physiology is designed as a living battery. Push it higher, Sloane commanded. Let's see what happens when we really charge him up. Bashir hesitated, but something in the stranger's expression made him comply. As the EM field intensity increased, the stranger's eyes snapped open, and for just a moment, they seemed to glow with an inner light. His body lifted slightly off the platform, hovering for a fraction of a second before gravity reasserted itself. Then the power surge hit a threshold, and everything went wrong. The stranger screamed, his body convulsing as energy cascaded through cellular pathways not yet ready to handle the load. Sparks erupted from the containment field generators. The lights in the infirmary flickered. And for one terrifying instant, the stranger's form seemed to become translucent, as if reality itself couldn't quite hold him in place. Shut it down! Bashir shouted, killing the EM field. The stranger collapsed to the platform, gasping, his body smoking slightly from the energy discharge. When he looked up, blood trickled from his nose, and his eyes held a mixture of terror and recognition. I felt something. When the energy hit, for just a second, I remembered. He struggled to sit up, trembling. There was a name. A place. I was falling. Through colors, through dimensions. And there were others. They were screaming. Sloane moved closer, his demeanor shifting from clinical observer to interrogator. Others? Who were they? Where were they? I don't know. The stranger's frustration boiled over. It was just fragments. But I wasn't alone when I came here. There were prisoners. Criminals. And they were being pulled through the same dimensional collapse that brought me here. His eyes widened with horror. If I'm here, then they might be too. And if they are, this entire sector is in danger. Sisko, who had been observing from the doorway, stepped forward. What kind of criminals? What are their capabilities? The stranger pressed his hands to his head, trying to force more memories through the barrier. They're like me. Or like I was. Strong. Dangerous. They don't care about laws or innocent lives. And if they're regaining their abilities faster than I am. He looked up at Sisko with desperate clarity. You have to find them. Before they hurt people. Before they discover what they can do in this universe. Sloan pulled out his comm badge. This is Sloan to all Starfleet intelligence assets in the sector. Initiate Protocol Epsilon 9. We have potential hostile infiltration of unknown entities with superhuman capabilities. Begin immediate surveillance of all Federation outposts and planetary installations. Wait, Odo said, stepping into the testing bay. You're taking the word of an amnesiac prisoner whose biology we don't understand. This could be exactly what he wants, to send us chasing phantoms while the real infiltration proceeds unchecked. Or, Sloan countered, we ignore the warning and wake up to find half our fleet destroyed by beings we can't fight. In intelligence work, Constable, we call that an unacceptable risk. The stranger looked between them, understanding dawning in his eyes. You still think I'm the enemy. Even after I warned you, you think this is some kind of trick. Can you blame us? Sisko asked quietly. We're at war. Trust is a luxury we can't afford. Until your memories return and we can verify your identity, you remain a security threat. I'm sorry, but that's the reality. Before the stranger could respond, alarms erupted throughout the station. Kira's voice came over the comm system, urgent and controlled. Commander Sisko to Ops immediately. We have a situation. Sisko, Odo, and Sloan rushed to the command center, leaving Bashir to tend to the exhausted stranger. On the main view screen, a Starfleet distress signal played on repeat. The USS Valkyrie, a Miranda-class frigate, broadcasting from a mining colony in the Badlands. Under attack, unknown hostiles, shields failing, casualties mounting. The signal dissolved into static, then reformed. Not weapons we can fight, moving too fast, please advise, please send. The transmission cut to silence. Dax's hands flew over her console. The Valkyrie went dark 30 seconds ago. Last known position was the Brima mining colony, population 3,000. Benjamin, the timeline matches. If these entities came through the same dimensional rupture as our guest, they'd have had just enough time to reach the Badlands and regain enough strength to attack. Sloan turned to Sisko with grim satisfaction. Looks like your prisoner was telling the truth. The question is, what do we do about it? Because I guarantee you, Commander, whatever attack the Valkyrie isn't going to stop at one colony. Sisko stared at the silent view screen, calculations running through his mind. The Defiant could reach the Badlands in 4 hours. But if they were facing enemies with capabilities similar to the strangers, beings who could survive in space, who metabolized energy directly, who possessed strength that made them nearly invulnerable, what could a single starship do? Major, he said decisively, prep the Defiant for immediate departure. Full weapons loadout, quantum torpedoes armed. Dax, you're with me. Odo, maintain security on the station and our guest. If he's connected to these attackers, Bashir stood nearby, tricorder in hand, but his attention was split between his patient and the chaos erupting throughout the station. They think I led them here, the stranger said quietly. That I'm responsible for whatever's happening. Are you? Bashir asked, not unkindly. I don't know. I can't remember enough to know. He looked at his hands, turning them over as if seeing them for the first time. But when that energy hit me, when I felt that surge of power, I knew something. I knew that whatever I was before I lost my memory, I was supposed to protect people. It's not a memory, it's deeper than that. It's who I am at the core. He met Bashir's eyes. Doctor, if there are others like me out there hurting people, I need to help stop them. But I can't do that locked in a cell, powerless and forgotten. Bashir studied him, his enhanced mind processing micro-expressions, vocal stress patterns, and physiological indicators. Every analysis suggested sincerity. But in war, sincerity could be weaponized just as effectively as deception. I'll speak to Commander Sisko, Bashir said finally. But understand, trust is earned, not given. Especially now. Especially here. As the Defiant powered up its engines and prepared to warp toward the Badlands, as Section 31's surveillance network began scanning for superhuman threats, as Kai Wen plotted political maneuvers in her quarters, the stranger sat alone in the infirmary and tried desperately to remember who he was. Somewhere in the fragments of his shattered memory, a symbol flickered, a diamond shape in red and yellow, representing something he'd once stood for. Hope, perhaps. Or justice. Or simply the belief that power should protect rather than dominate. But without the power, without the memory, what did any of it mean? And in the darkness of space, in the ruins of the Brima mining colony, 3 figures stood among the wreckage and looked toward the stars with eyes that burned with hunger and recognition. They had been prisoners, locked away in a dimension without light, without hope. Now they were free. And they were beginning to remember what they once were. What they could become again. The Defiant cut through space at maximum warp, its compact frame pushing the boundaries of structural integrity. On the bridge, Sisko sat in the command chair, his face set in the expression of controlled tension that his crew had learned to recognize during the worst moments of the war. The view screen showed nothing but streaking stars, but everyone knew what waited at journey's end. ETA to the Badlands, 4 minutes, Dax reported from the helm, her centuries of Trill experience lending calm to her voice despite the circumstances. Benjamin, I'm picking up residual energy signatures consistent with the wormhole's quantum fluctuations. Whatever came through left a trail. Can you track it? Sisko asked. Already doing it. The signatures lead directly to Brima colony, then scatter. Multiple trajectories, all heading in different directions. They split up after the attack. Worf's voice rumbled from tactical. A coordinated strike followed by dispersal to avoid concentrated response. Classic military tactics. These entities possess strategic thinking. Or they're running scared. Chief O'Brien suggested from engineering. Could be they don't know where they are either, just lashing out at the first thing they encountered. The Defiant dropped out of warp at the edge of the Badlands, and the view screen revealed devastation. The Brima mining colony, a series of interconnected habitats built into an asteroid, was shattered. Entire sections had been torn open to vacuum. The USS Valkyrie drifted nearby, her hull breached in multiple locations, plasma fires still burning in the exposed compartments. Life signs? Sisko demanded. Dax's hands moved across her console with practiced efficiency, but her expression told the story before her words did. Detecting 17 survivors aboard the Valkyrie. The colony. Benjamin, I'm reading 43 life signs. Out of 3,000. The bridge fell silent. Everyone had seen death during the Dominion War, had witnessed entire fleets destroyed, planets occupied, civilizations ground beneath the Dominion's relentless advance. But this felt different. This was precision carnage, surgical in its brutality. Beam survivors to the Defiant's medical bay, Sisko ordered. Dax, full sensor sweep. I want to know what did this. While the transporter chief worked to stabilize survivors for beam out, Dax analyzed the wreckage with scientific precision that barely masked her horror. The damage patterns are unusual. No phaser burns, no torpedo impacts, no weapon signatures at all. The hull breaches appear to have been caused by massive kinetic force. Something physically tore through duranium plating like it was paper. Debris analysis? Worf asked. That's the strange part. There's almost no debris. Whatever attacked them was precise, specific targets, specific breaches. The main reactor is intact. Life support systems in the surviving sections are still functional. It's as if the attackers knew exactly where to strike to cause maximum casualties with minimum collateral damage. O'Brien pulled up a damage schematic on his console. Chief, look at this. The Valkyrie's shield generators were taken out first, all 4 of them, simultaneously, in under 3 seconds. Then they breached the bridge, engineering, and weapons control in a coordinated strike. This wasn't random violence. This was a military operation executed by someone who understood exactly how Starfleet ships function. The first survivors materialized in the medical bay, and Dr. Bashir's voice came through the comm immediately. Commander, you need to hear this. These people saw what attacked them. Cisco moved to a private comm channel. Go ahead, Doctor. On the small view screen at his station, Bashir's face appeared, and behind him, a traumatized Valkyrie crewman wrapped in thermal blankets. This is Ensign Marquez, Tactical Officer. Ensign, tell the commander what you told me. Marquez's voice shook, but discipline held him together. They came out of nowhere, sir. 3 of them. Humanoid, wearing what looked like black uniforms with silver markings. They didn't use ships or weapons. They just flew. In space. Without suits. Moving faster than our targeting computers could track. He paused, swallowing hard. Our phasers hit them directly. Multiple times. They didn't even slow down. It was like shooting at solid neutronium. Did they speak? Cisco asked. Make any demands? One of them did, sir. A woman. She looked at our captain through the view screen and said, "Kneel before your new gods." Then they tore through our shields like they weren't there. Captain Morris ordered us to abandon ship, but... Marquez's voice broke. They were so fast, Commander. They moved through the ship faster than we could evacuate. They weren't just killing us, they were studying us. Testing our defenses. Learning. Cisco felt cold certainty settling into his gut. Did you see where they went? The woman and one of the men went deeper into the Badlands. The third one, the biggest one, he flew toward Deep Space Nine's position, sir. At speeds our sensors couldn't calculate. On the Defiant S bridge, alarms erupted. Dax spun in her chair. Benjamin, I'm detecting a massive energy signature approaching the station at high velocity. It's traveling at warp speed without a warp field. That's impossible, but it's happening. Cisco slapped his comm badge. Cisco to DS9. Red alert. Incoming hostile, superhuman capabilities, potentially invulnerable to conventional weapons. Odo, get everyone to secure sections and raise shields immediately. Odo's voice came back tense. Acknowledged. Commander, what about the prisoner? Keep him locked down. If this is connected to him, I want him contained. Understood. Odo out. On Deep Space Nine, the station's defense protocols activated with practiced efficiency. Weapons systems powered up, shields snapped into place, and security teams moved to defensive positions. In the infirmary's isolation ward, the stranger stood at the force field, his enhanced hearing picking up the alarms, his fragmented instincts screaming warnings he couldn't fully articulate. Bashir had returned to the station just minutes before, and now he stood outside the force field, tricorder scanning the stranger's increasingly agitated bioreadings. Your heart rate is elevated, neural activity spiking. Do you know what's coming? I don't know, the stranger said, pressing his hands against the force field. But I feel it. Something familiar. Something dangerous. And every instinct I have is telling me that I need to stop it. He looked at Bashir with desperate clarity. Doctor, please. If someone's coming to attack this station, I can help. I know I can. I just need. Need what? Sloane's voice cut in as he entered the infirmary, phaser in hand. Need us to release you so you can coordinate with your fellow infiltrators? The timing is remarkably convenient, wouldn't you say? You arrive, warn us about dangerous entities, and now one of them shows up right on schedule. That's not what's happening. The stranger's frustration boiled over, and for a moment, the lights in the infirmary flickered. The force field wavered, static crackling across its surface. Everyone froze. The stranger looked at his hands in shock. I didn't mean to. I don't even know how I did that. Fascinating. Sloane murmured, raising his phaser. Cellular response to emotional stress. Doctor, what are his energy levels? Bashir checked his tricorder. Spiking. Whatever ambient radiation he's been absorbing, it's accumulating. At this rate, he'll reach critical mass within hours. Before anyone could respond, the station shuddered violently. On every view screen throughout DS9, the approaching entity became visible, a humanoid figure, massive and muscular, wearing black clothing with a silver emblem. He wasn't slowing down. He was accelerating. Brace for impact. Kira's voice echoed through the station. The entity struck DS9's shields like a meteorite hitting an atmosphere. The entire station rang like a struck bell, throwing personnel to the deck. The shields held, but the power drain was catastrophic. 40% of the shield grid overloaded in an instant. On ops, Kira struggled back to her feet. Shields down to 60% from a single impact. What the hell was that? Dax's console lit up with telemetry. A humanoid. Traveling at 0.97 light speed. The kinetic energy alone should have vaporized him, but sensors show he's completely unharmed and repositioning for another strike. Through the view screen, they watched the figure float in space, staring at the station with visible amusement. He was bald, towering even at this distance, with features that suggested brutal intelligence. When he spoke, his voice transmitted through the same impossible subspace carrier wave the stranger had used. Impressive shields for primitives, but ultimately futile. I am Non, executioner of Krypton's High Council. Surrender the last son, or I will tear your pathetic station apart section by section. Kira muted the channel and looked at her crew. Last son? Is he talking about our prisoner? Nog, working the engineering console in O'Brien's absence, pulled up power distribution schematics. Major, our shields can't take another hit like that. We need to either run or fight, and I don't think we can do either. Can we negotiate? Lieutenant Ezri Dax asked, her young host's nervousness showing through the symbiont's centuries of experience. With someone who just killed thousands and is demanding we hand over a prisoner? Kira's Bajoran resistance instincts kicked in. You never negotiated from weakness. Open the channel. Let's see if he's willing to talk before he starts killing more people. The view screen flickered back to show Nod's face, and his expression shifted from amusement to irritation. You dare keep me waiting? Perhaps you need a demonstration. He raised his hands, and his eyes began to glow with crimson energy. In the infirmary, the stranger's eyes widened with sudden recognition. No. No, he's going to use his heat vision. You have to evacuate that section, you have to. Heat vision. The words triggered something in Bashir's enhanced mind, a cascade of connections, hypotheses forming at superhuman speed. His eyes generate directed energy beams. If our prisoner has the same biology then. He spun to the stranger. Can you do that? Can you generate energy beams from your eyes? I don't know. I can't remember how. On ops, twin beams of incandescent energy lanced from Nant's eyes, striking DS9's shields with the intensity of a photon torpedo barrage. The shields buckled, collapsed, and the beams punched through the station's outer hull, melting through duranium like a cutting torch through ice. Atmosphere vented from 3 decks, emergency bulkheads slamming shut to contain the breaches. Shields down! Nog shouted. Hull breaches on decks 8, 9, and 10. Casualties reported. Nant's laughter echoed through the calm. Your weapons are toys. Your defenses are illusions. Surrender Kal-El, or watch your station die around you. Kira slapped her comm badge. Kira to Odo. Get to the infirmary. We need answers from the prisoner, and we need them now. In the isolation ward, Odo materialized through the security door, his face grim. You heard. Start talking. Who is Nan? What does he want with you? And how do we stop him? The stranger backed against the far wall of the cell, his mind reeling with fragments coalescing into terrible understanding. Nan. I know that name. He was a criminal. Dangerous. He was locked away because... The memories wouldn't come, but the knowledge was there, buried beneath the amnesia. He wants to kill me. Or worse, use me as leverage for something. I don't know what, but I know he can't be reasoned with. He's a brute, A soldier who only understands force. Then how do we generate enough force to stop someone who can survive in space and melt through station hulls with his eyes? Odo demanded. The stranger looked at his hands, feeling the energy accumulating in his cells, the power building from hours of radiation absorption. I don't know if I can. But I have to try. Because if I don't, everyone on this station dies. And that's not acceptable. Sloane stepped forward, phaser still aimed but his expression calculating. You're offering to fight him. Why should we trust you? Because I don't have a choice, the stranger said simply. And neither do you. Whatever I was before, whoever I was, I know one thing for certain. I don't let innocent people die when I can stop it. Even if it kills me. Especially if it kills me. The station shuddered again as Nan unleashed another assault, and somewhere in the distance, they heard the groaning of stressed metal and the screams of the injured. Time was running out. Odo looked at Sloane, then at Bashir, making a decision that could doom them all or save them. Lower the force field. But if he makes one wrong move, I won't, the stranger promised, stepping through the deactivated barrier. His body thrummed with barely contained energy, his cells crying out for more power, more fuel, more of whatever had made him whole. Just point me toward the airlock. And hope I remember how to do this. As they rushed through the corridors toward the nearest airlock, alarms blaring and emergency lights casting everything in hellish red, Bashir ran beside the stranger, tricorder scanning continuously. Your cellular energy is at 30% of what I theorize would be full capacity. If you tried to fight him at less than half power, then I lose, the stranger finished. I know. But 30% of something is better than 100% of nothing. They reached the airlock. Through the viewport, they could see Nan floating in space, preparing another assault, his eyes glowing with malevolent energy. The stranger placed his hand on the airlock door, feeling the cold metal, feeling the fear and determination warring inside him. For what it's worth, Odo said quietly, I believe you're trying to help. But if you're wrong about yourself, if you're actually one of them, then you'll do what you have to do, the stranger said. I wouldn't expect anything less. He looked at the faces around him, Odo's liquid features, Bashir's concerned expression, Sloane's calculating coldness, and felt something shift in his fractured memory. The fog didn't clear, but a shape emerged within it. A purpose. What did he call me? In his message? The last son, Odo replied. The stranger nodded slowly. Last son. Kal-El. Those names mean something. I just wish I knew what. He stepped into the airlock, and the door sealed behind him. Through the viewport, he gave them a final nod. Decompressed the chamber. Bashir activated the controls. An atmosphere vented into space with explosive force. The stranger, Kal-El, the last son, whoever he truly was, tumbled out into the void, his body adjusting instinctively to the vacuum, his cells drinking in stellar radiation with desperate hunger. Nan turned toward him, and recognition blazed across the executioner's brutal features. Kal-El, the son of Jor-El. I had hoped to find you cowering among these primitives. He cracked his knuckles with a sound that somehow transmitted through vacuum. When I'm finished with you, I'll kill every living thing on that station. Slowly. And you'll watch. Kal-El floated in space, feeling power surge through his body, feeling memories trying to break through the barriers in his mind. When he spoke, his voice carried across the void with growing confidence. I don't know who I am. Not completely. But I know who you are, Nan. And I know you're not taking this station. Not while I'm still breathing. Then, Nan snarled, his eyes blazing with crimson energy. I'll simply have to stop your breathing. The heat vision lanced across space, and Kal-El moved, instinct overriding conscious thought, twisting aside with speed that surprised him. The beams missed by meters, searing past to dissipate harmlessly in the void. The first battle had begun. And on DS9, watching through every available sensor, the crew held their breath and prayed to whatever gods they believed in, the prophets, Starfleet regulations, or simple human hope, that their mysterious prisoner was truly on their side. Because if he wasn't, they'd just armed their own executioner. The vacuum of space became a battlefield unlike anything the sensors aboard Deep Space Nine had ever recorded. Nan moved with the brutal efficiency of a trained executioner, his attacks calculated to maim rather than kill quickly. Each strike carried enough kinetic energy to shatter a shuttlecraft, but Kal-El's instincts, buried beneath amnesia but not erased, kept him moving, dodging, surviving. In Ops, the crew watched the conflict unfold on multiple view screens, sensor data streaming in faster than conscious minds could process. Kira stood at the center of it all, her command decisions reduced to helpless observation. "Can we get a weapons lock?" Nog shook his head, his Ferengi ears drooping with frustration. "They're moving too fast, Major. Even if we could target them, our phasers would be just as likely to hit Kal-El as Nan. And based on what happened to the Valkyrie, I'm not sure our weapons would do anything except make Nan angry." On the view screen, Nan caught Kal-El with a backhand strike that sent him tumbling through space. The impact would have liquefied a normal humanoid, but Kal-El recovered mid-flight, arresting his momentum with visible effort. His face showed pain. Whatever invulnerability he possessed wasn't complete, not at his diminished power levels. "He's outmatched," Dax observed clinically, running combat analysis algorithms through her console. "Nan is operating at significantly higher power levels. Every exchange weakens Kal-El further while Nan barely registers the exertion." In the infirmary, Bashir monitored the stranger's biosigns through the sensors embedded in the airlock. "His cellular energy is depleting rapidly. At this rate, he'll be completely exhausted in less than 10 minutes. And if he loses consciousness in vacuum..." He didn't need to finish the thought. Sloane stood beside him, watching the battle with the detached interest of a scientist observing a particularly fascinating experiment. Interesting. They shared the same basic physiology, but Nan has clearly had more time to absorb stellar radiation. Or perhaps he was already at full capacity when he arrived. Either way, our prisoner is fighting a losing battle. "Then we need to help him," Bashir said, already moving toward the door. "Help him how?" Sloane asked. "You said yourself he's powered by stellar radiation. Unless you've figured out how to replicate a sun in the next 9 minutes. Bashir stopped mid-stride, his genetically enhanced mind making connections at superhuman speed. "Stellar radiation? Of course. The station's fusion reactors. They generate the same basic spectrum as a main sequence star, just at lower intensities. If we could channel that energy, focus it through the deflector array, you'd create an artificial solar radiation beam." Sloane finished, his expression shifting to genuine interest. "Risky. The reactors aren't designed for that kind of directed output. You could overload the entire power grid. Or save the station," Bashir countered. "Major, are you hearing this?" Kira's voice came through the comm immediately. "I heard." "Nog, is it possible?" The young Ferengi engineer was already running calculations, his fingers flying across the console with O'Brien-trained precision. "Theoretically, yes. We'd have to reroute power from every non-essential system, reconfigure the deflector to emit in the ultraviolet and gamma spectrum, and hope the emitters don't melt from the energy load. But Major, even if it works, we'd be completely defenseless. No shields, no weapons, nothing. If Nan decides to attack while we're charging Kal-El, then we lose everything." Kira finished. "But if we don't try, we lose anyway. Do it. You have 5 minutes to make it work." In space, Kal-El blocked another of Nan's strikes, and felt his arm go numb from the impact. Every movement was becoming harder, every dodge slower. Nan circled him like a predator toying with wounded prey, his brutal face split in a sadistic grin. "You're weak, Kal-El," Nan transmitted through their shared subspace carrier wave. "The son of Jor-El, the great scientist who doomed our world with his warnings. I should thank you for leading me to this universe. The stars here are perfect for our kind. Weak civilizations, primitive weapons, endless worlds to conquer. Zod will be pleased. Kal-El's mind latched onto the name. Zod. General Zod. Fragments of memory tried to surface. A militaristic face, a megalomaniacal vision of conquest, a threat to everything Kal-El had once protected. Where is Zod? Where's Ursa? Exploring, Nan said casually, dodging Kal-El's attempted strike with contemptuous ease. Learning about this new universe. Finding its weaknesses. By the time they return, I'll have broken you completely, and we'll begin our conquest with your corpse as our banner. Nan's eyes blazed crimson, and Kal-El barely managed to raise his arms in defense. The heat vision struck him full on, and even his dense molecular structure couldn't fully disperse the energy. His uniform, the simple Bajoran clothing Bashir had given him, disintegrated instantly. The beams seared his skin, burned through layers of invulnerable tissue, and Kal-El screamed. The pain was beyond anything he could remember experiencing. But worse than the physical agony was the knowledge that he was failing. The people on the station were counting on him, and he was too weak, too depleted, too broken to save them. On DS9, Bashir watched Kal-El's biosigns plummet. He's going into shock. His body can't sustain this level of damage. Nog, how much longer? 90 seconds. The deflector array is almost ready, but the power conduits are already showing stress fractures. This is going to work exactly once, Doctor, and then we'll be dead in space. Kira made her decision with the certainty of a former resistance fighter who'd bet on long odds more times than she could count. All hands brace for power fluctuation. Redirect life support to minimum levels. Shut down everything except the deflector array and sensors. Nog, the second you're ready, fire. Throughout the station, lights dimmed to emergency levels. The hum of environmental systems faded to silence. Every available joule of energy flowed toward the deflector dish, converting fusion reactor output into a focused beam of stellar radiation. In space, Nan grabbed Kal-El by the throat, lifting him like a rag doll. Any last words, son of Jor-El? Any final pleading for mercy? Kal-El met Nan's eyes, and despite the pain, despite the exhaustion, managed a defiant smile. Yeah. Duck. Nan's expression shifted to confusion just as the deflector array erupted with brilliant golden light. The artificial solar radiation beam lanced across the void, striking Kal-El with the concentrated energy of a star's core. His cells, starved and depleted, drank the radiation with desperate hunger. Power surged through his body like lightning through a conductor. Nan released him, shielding his own face from the intense light. What? Kal-El's eyes snapped open, glowing with inner fire. His body straightened, wounds visibly healing, strength flooding back into exhausted muscles. When he spoke, his voice carried a confidence that hadn't been there before. You wanted the last son of Krypton? Here I am. He moved, really moved, faster than Nan could track. His fist connected with Nan's jaw with a thunderclap that registered on the station's sensors as a localized shockwave. Nan hurtled backward, tumbling through space for the first time since the battle began. On DS9, the crew watched in stunned silence as the tide turned. Kal-El pursued Nan with methodical precision, each strike calculated, each movement efficient. This wasn't the desperate defense of moments ago, this was controlled power, disciplined force. His biosigns are stabilizing, Bashir reported, wonder creeping into his clinical tone. More than stabilizing, they're exceeding anything we've recorded. The radiation boost pushed him past whatever threshold was limiting his abilities. Nan recovered, fury replacing his sadistic amusement. You think one lucky strike makes you my equal? His heat vision blazed, but Kal-El didn't dodge. He caught the beams on his chest, and his own eyes began to glow crimson in response. I don't think I'm your equal, Nan, Kal-El said, and his own heat vision erupted, meeting Nan's beams in a brilliant collision of energy. I know I'm better. Because I remember now. Not everything, but enough. The heat vision clash illuminated the void like a binary star. Both combatants poured power into their attacks, muscles straining, wills locked in direct conflict. But Kal-El had the advantage now. The focus radiation from DS9 had charged his cells beyond their previous capacity, while Nan had been operating on whatever reserves he'd accumulated during his journey through the dimensional rift. Slowly, inexorably, Kal-El's beams pushed forward, forcing Nan's back toward their source. Nan's face contorted with effort, then with fear as he realized what was happening. "This isn't possible! You were weak! You were broken!" "I was," Kal-El agreed, his voice strained but steady. "But these people helped me. They gave me a chance when they had every reason not to. And I don't let people down who show me that kind of trust." With a final surge of power, Kal-El's heat vision overwhelmed Nan's defense. The beams struck the executioner square in the chest, and the force sent him rocketing away from the station, tumbling uncontrolled into the depths of space. Kal-El pursued, catching up to Nan with speed that blurred his form on the sensors. He grabbed the dazed Kryptonian by the collar, pulling him close. "You're going to tell me where Zod and Ursa went. You're going to tell me what they're planning. And then you're going to stand trial for the massacre at Prime Colony. Those are your options. Fighting me isn't one of them anymore." Nan's response was to headbutt Kal-El with enough force to shatter a starship hull. Kal-El's head snapped back, blood spraying from his nose. Even his enhanced durability had limits. But he didn't release his grip. Instead, he returned the headbutt with equal force, then followed it with a combination of strikes that would have pulverized solid neutronium. The battle became brutal, primal. Two near-invulnerable beings exchanging blows that registered as seismic events on the station's sensors. They crashed through debris from the earlier attack, shattered the remains of a destroyed mining platform, and created their own gravity wells from the sheer force of their impacts. But Kal-El had something Nan didn't: purpose beyond conquest. Every strike carried the weight of the 3,000 dead at Prime Colony. Every defense honored the people on DS9 who'd risked everything to help him. And somewhere beneath the tactical analysis and the combat instinct, memories were surfacing, a symbol in red and yellow, a world called Earth, a promise to use his power responsibly. He was Superman. Or he had been. Or he would be again. The name meant something. It had to. Kal-El caught Nan's next punch, twisted the executioner's arm with practiced precision, and drove his knee into Nan's ribs hard enough to create visible shockwaves. Nan gasped, the first sound of genuine pain he'd made during the entire battle. Kal-El pressed the advantage, raining down strikes that even Nan's invulnerability couldn't fully absorb. "Stand down!" Kal-El commanded. "You can't win this. Not anymore." Nan's response was a desperate eye blast at point-blank range. Kal-El twisted aside, but the beams grazed his shoulder, burning through skin and muscle. He gritted his teeth against the pain and grabbed Nan's head, forcing it to the side so the heat vision dissipated harmlessly into space. "I said stand down!" For a moment, they hung there in the void, locked together, two gods struggling for dominance. Then Nan's body went limp, his energy reserves finally exhausted. Kal-El maintained his grip, wary of deception, but the executioner was truly unconscious. Pushed past his limits by the sustained combat. Kal-El looked back at DS9, at the station that had sheltered him, doubted him, tested him, and ultimately saved him. His calm carrier wave activated. "This is Kal-El. Nan is neutralized. Requesting immediate transport for prisoner containment." And he paused, something that might have been gratitude or wonder coloring his voice. "Thank you. For the radiation boost. For trusting me. For everything." Kira's response came through immediately. "We're transporting you both directly to the brig. And Kal-El? Welcome to the team. Officially." The transporter beam enveloped both Kryptonians, and they materialized in DS9's maximum security holding area. Separate cells, triple force fields, sensor arrays calibrated specifically to their unique energy signatures. Nan remained unconscious, his body beginning the slow process of cellular recovery. Kal-El stood in his cell, still catching his breath, still processing what had just happened. Odo entered the brig, Bashir and Sloane following close behind. The shapeshifter studied Kal-El with new appreciation. That was quite a performance. You risked your life for a station full of people who didn't trust you. You gave me the chance to prove myself, Kal-El said simply. That's more than I had a right to expect. He looked at his hands, at the fading burns from Nant's heat vision. And it worked. The battle, the stress, the energy, it broke through whatever was blocking my memories. Not completely, but enough. I remember Krypton. I remember my parents sending me away. I remember another world, another life. And I remember that Zod, Ursa, and Nan were the worst criminals our civilization ever produced. Then you can help us stop them, Sloane said, stepping forward with predatory interest. You know their capabilities, their tactics, their weaknesses. That makes you our most valuable asset in this conflict. Asset? Kal-El's eyes narrowed. I'm not a weapon you can aim at your enemies. No, Sloane agreed. You're something far more valuable. You're proof that they can be beaten. And in a war where morale and hope are as important as weapons and shields, that's worth more than an entire fleet. He pulled out his PDD, displaying star charts marked with Section 31 intelligence data. We've tracked 2 energy signatures matching your profile heading toward different sectors. One is moving toward Cardassian space. The other is heading for the Klingon Empire. If Zod and Ursa reach those civilizations with their full powers, they'll either conquer them or trigger conflicts that could shatter the entire Alpha Quadrant. Kal-El finished grimly. Zod is a brilliant military strategist. Ursa is cunning and absolutely ruthless. Together, they're more dangerous than 10 board cubes. Kira's voice came through the calm. Then we stop them. Kal-El, I'm authorizing your release from the brig with full provisional cooperation status. Dr. Bashir will continue monitoring your physiology, and you'll be accompanied by security at all times, but you're willing to trust me, Kal-El said quietly. Even after everything. You earned it, Kira replied. Now let's see if you can help us save the quadrant. As the force field deactivated and Kal-El stepped out of the cell, he felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders, familiar, heavy, but somehow right. This wasn't his universe, these weren't his people, but the principle remained the same. Power carried responsibility. Strength demanded protection of the weak. And whoever he had been before the dimensional rift, whatever he might become after, right now he was needed. And Superman, because that's what the name meant, he remembered now, a symbol of hope and protection, Superman never walked away from people who needed him. Even if those people existed in a universe where gods were just advanced beings, where magic was science, and where the greatest threats came not from supervillains but from ideological conflicts played out on a galactic scale. This was going to be complicated. But then again, saving the universe always was. The USS Defiant returned to Deep Space Nine 6 hours after the battle, and Captain Sisko's first action upon docking was to convene an emergency briefing in the wardroom. The senior staff assembled quickly, Kira, Dax, Worf, O'Brien, Bashir, and Odo, along with the 2 wildcards that made this meeting unlike any other in Federation history. Kal-El, now wearing a hastily replicated uniform that approximated Starfleet colors, and Luther Sloane, representing interests that officially didn't exist. Sisko stood at the head of the table, his expression carrying the weight of command decisions that could reshape the quadrant. Report. What did you find at Brima Colony? Dax pulled up holographic displays showing the devastation in clinical detail. 3,217 confirmed dead. 43 survivors, most in critical condition. The attack pattern suggests the Kryptonians. She nodded toward Kal-El, using the term he provided. We're testing their abilities and learning about our defensive capabilities. They destroyed specific targets, communications arrays, weapons platforms, shield generators. It was reconnaissance through violence. And the survivors' testimony? Sisko asked. Bashir consulted his PADD. Consistent with what Ensign Marquez reported. 2 Kryptonians, 1 female matching the description Kal-El gave us for Ursa, 1 male we're assuming is General Zod. They demonstrated flight, superhuman strength, heat vision, and invulnerability to phaser fire. They interrogated several colonists about Federation political structure, military capabilities, and the location of strategic installations before. He paused, jaw tightening, before executing them to demonstrate their power. The wardroom fell silent. Even Worf, who had faced Borg and Dominion forces without flinching, looked disturbed by the casual brutality of the attack. Kal-El spoke quietly, his voice heavy with guilt. That's Zod's methodology. Overwhelming force combined with psychological warfare. He wants people to know resistance is futile before they even try to fight back. On Krypton, he nearly succeeded in overthrowing the Council using the same tactics. But he failed, Sisko observed. Why? Because my father exposed his coup before he could consolidate power. Zod and his followers were sentenced to the Phantom Zone. A dimensional prison where they'd exist without form, without sensation, for eternity. Kal-El's hands clenched on the table. Clearly, that sentence didn't hold. And now they're loose in a universe that doesn't understand what they're capable of. Sloane leaned forward, his pleasant expression masking the calculating mind beneath. Which brings us to the strategic question: how do we stop them? Our conventional weapons are useless. Even with the radiation boost technique we used on Kal-El, we can't equip every starship in the fleet with modified deflector arrays. We need a different approach. We need allies, Sisko said, and his gaze moved to Worf. Commander, you know the Klingon Empire better than anyone here. If Zod is heading toward Klingon space, what will he encounter? Worf's response was immediate and certain. Warriors who will view him as either the greatest challenge they've ever faced or a god worthy of worship. The Empire is fractured since Gowron's power struggles. Many houses seek glory through combat. If Zod offers them conquest, he didn't need to finish the thought. He'll turn the Klingon Empire into his personal army, Kira concluded grimly. And what about the Cardassians? If Ursa is heading there. The Cardassians are reeling from their break with the Dominion, Dax interjected. Their military is weakened, their government unstable. A sufficiently powerful individual could seize control of their entire infrastructure within days. O'Brien pulled up a tactical display showing the positions of major Alpha Quadrant powers. And if Zod controls the Klingon while Ursa controls the Cardassians, they'd have the 2 most militaristic civilizations in the quadrant under their command. Add their personal capabilities to actual fleets and armies, and the Federation wouldn't stand a chance. Sisko absorbed this information, his tactical mind already formulating responses. Then we need to move fast. Split their attention, prevent them from consolidating power, and find a way to neutralize their abilities. He turned to Kal-El. You beat Nan. Can you beat both Zod and Ursa simultaneously? Kal-El met Sisko's gaze without flinching. At full power, maybe. Right now? He shook his head. Nan is a brute, strong, dangerous, but predictable. Zod is a military genius with centuries of combat experience. Ursa is faster than Nan, more tactical, and absolutely without mercy. Together, they'd overwhelm me in minutes. And that's assuming I continue absorbing stellar radiation at current rates. If they'd been charging up longer than I have. They have. Bashir interrupted, consulting his medical tricorder data. Based on cellular degradation patterns from Nan's unconscious form, I estimate the Kryptonians have been in this universe approximately 72 hours longer than Kal-El. They've had more time to absorb radiation, more time to regain their full capabilities. Which means they're operating at near maximum capacity while Kal-El is still recovering. Sloane summarized. Unfortunate, but not insurmountable. We simply need to level the playing field. Odo's liquid features arranged themselves into suspicion. And how exactly do you propose we do that? Sloane smiled. The same way Starfleet has survived every impossible situation, through intelligence, ingenuity, and a willingness to bend rules when necessary. Section 31 has been developing countermeasures for superhuman threats since the eugenics wars. We've studied Khan's augments, analyzed Borg enhancement protocols, even theorized responses to Q-level reality manipulation. The Kryptonians are powerful, but they're not invincible. They have weaknesses. Kal-El's eyes narrowed. What kind of weaknesses are you talking about? Cellular vulnerability to specific radiation frequencies for one. Bashir said, his enhanced mind clearly having worked alongside Sloan on this analysis. Your physiology absorbs energy from yellow sun radiation, but red sun radiation actually depletes your cellular reserves. If we could generate a red sun radiation field, you'd turn me human, Kal-El finished. Vulnerable. Mortal. You and every other Kryptonian in the field, Sloan confirmed. It's not pleasant, but it's effective. We've already begun developing portable red sun generators based on the data from your cellular scans. Deploy them strategically, and we could neutralize Zod and Ursa long enough to capture them. Sisko held up a hand, sensing the rising tension in Kal-El's posture. Before we discuss weaponizing anyone's biology, let's focus on immediate tactical responses. Kal-El, you mentioned Zod as a military strategist. What would his first move be if he's heading toward Klingon space? Kal-El forced himself to think tactically rather than emotionally. He'd identify the power structure and insert himself at the top. Challenge the strongest warrior, defeat them publicly, and claim authority through right of conquest. The Klingon respect strength above everything. Zod would exploit that. Once he has their loyalty, he'd use their resources to build an army capable of conquering the quadrant. Then we need to reach the Klingon Empire before he does. Worf stated. Challenge him ourselves, on Klingon terms, with Klingon witnesses. If we can discredit him before he establishes authority. We'd need a champion. Kira interrupted. Someone who could fight him and win in single combat. Someone the Klingon would respect. Every eye in the room turned to Kal-El. He shook his head immediately. I already told you, I can't beat Zod at my current power level. Even if I could, showing up and claiming to be stronger than their greatest warriors? That's exactly what Zod would do. It would make me look like just another conqueror. Then we don't present you as a conqueror, Sisko said thoughtfully. We present you as an ally. Someone willing to stand with the Klingon against a common threat, not above them. Worf, you still have connections in the Empire. Could you arrange an audience with Chancellor Gowron? Worf considered carefully. Possibly. My family honor has been restored, and my service record carries weight. But Gowron is paranoid, especially during wartime. Convincing him to trust an unknown alien with godlike powers. He looked at Kal-El appraisingly. You would need to prove yourself. Demonstrate honor, courage, and willingness to bleed for the Empire. I can bleed, Kal-El said quietly. None proved that. But I'm not interested in Klingon political games. I just want to stop Zod before he kills more innocent people. Then you'd better start caring about politics. Sloan interjected. Because in this universe, power alone doesn't win conflicts. Alliances do. Strategies do. Understanding that your enemies aren't always the ones shooting at you. Sometimes they're the ones smiling and offering cooperation while planning your destruction. He stood, pacing around the table. The Dominion War has taught the Federation that idealism without pragmatism is suicide. If you want to stop Zod and Ursa, you'll need to learn how this quadrant actually operates. Kal-El's jaw tightened. Where I come from, we had rules. Principles. Things you don't compromise even when it's convenient. Where you came from doesn't exist anymore, Sloan said bluntly. At least not for you. This is your reality now. The question is whether you'll adapt to it or watch it burn while clinging to principles from a dead universe. That's enough, Sisko said sharply, his command voice cutting through the rising tension. Mr. Sloan, your tactical analysis is valuable, but philosophy lessons aren't required. Kal-El, you've demonstrated good faith. You risked your life to save this station. That earns you the right to approach this mission your way, within reason. He pulled up a star chart showing Klingon territory. Here's what I'm proposing. The Defiant takes Kal-El and Worf to QNOS. We request an audience with Bajoran, brief him on the Kryptonian threat, and offer our assistance in defending the Empire. Meanwhile, Major Kira takes a runabout to Cardassian space with Odo and Dax. Make contact with their provisional government, warn them about Ursa, and see if you can convince them to accept Federation aid. The Cardassians will never accept our help, Kira said flatly. They hate us, and they've just spent years allied with the Dominion. Asking them to trust us now is exactly why you're the right person for the job, Sisko finished. You understand occupation. You've fought against oppression. If anyone can make the Cardassians understand that Ursa represents a greater threat than old enmities, it's you. Kira nodded slowly, accepting the logic even if she didn't like it. And what about Nan? We're just leaving him in our brig? Nan stays here under maximum security, Sisko confirmed. Dr. Bashir, I want you to continue analyzing his biology. Find every weakness, every vulnerability, everything we can use against the others. And coordinate with Sloan. If Section 31's Red Sun technology can work, I want it operational within 48 hours. Understood, Bashir said, though his expression showed clear discomfort with collaborating with Section 31. Sloan smiled. Always a pleasure working with Starfleet Medical. So ethical. So bound by oath. So predictable. He turned to Sisko. Captain, with your permission, I'll coordinate intelligence assets throughout the sector. If Zod or Ursa make any moves, we'll know immediately. Granted. But Mr. Sloan. Sisko's voice carried steel beneath the diplomacy. If I find out Section 31 is pursuing its own agenda at the expense of Federation lives, I'll personally ensure your operation becomes very public. Are we clear? Crystal, Captain? Sloane's pleasant mask never cracked. I want the same thing you do, a safe quadrant. We simply have different views on what methods are acceptable to achieve it. As the briefing broke up, Kal-El remained seated, staring at the star chart showing territories he didn't recognize, populated by species he'd never encountered, governed by political complexities that made his head spin. In his fractured memories of Earth, heroism had been simpler: stop the bad guy, save the innocent, let the authorities handle the aftermath. Here, the authorities were asking him to become a political chess piece in conflicts he barely understood. Dax approached him quietly, her trill wisdom evident in her patient expression. Overwhelming, isn't it? 7 lifetimes of experience, and I still get lost in Alpha Quadrant politics sometimes. 7 lifetimes? Kal-El looked at her questioningly. I'm a trill. The symbiont inside me. She gestured to the spots marking her temples and neck. Has lived through 7 previous hosts. Each one's memories, experiences, and knowledge are part of me now. It gives perspective, but also complexity. Sometimes I'm not sure where Jadzia ends and Dax begins. Kal-El understood that feeling more than she knew. I don't know where Kal-El ends and Superman begins. Or if they're even the same person anymore. The memories are coming back, but they feel like they belong to someone else. Someone who lived in a simpler universe. There's no such thing as a simple universe, Dax said gently. Just different complications. On Earth, you fought individual villains. Here, you're fighting ideologies backed by interstellar empires. The scale changes, but the core principle doesn't. You protect people. You use your power responsibly. You make the hard choices and live with the consequences. And if I make the wrong choice? If I trust the wrong people or fight the wrong battle? Dax smiled with the confidence of someone who'd lived long enough to make countless mistakes. Then you adapt, learn, and try to do better next time. That's all any of us can do. Even gods. I'm not a god, Kal-El said firmly. Tell that to the 3,000 people at Prima Colony who died because beings with your capabilities decided mortal lives didn't matter. Dax replied quietly. To them, to us, you might as well be gods. The question isn't whether you are, it's what kind of god you choose to be. The kind that rules, or the kind that serves. Before Kal-El could respond, Worf approached, his Klingon features set in an expression that might have been respect. Kal-El. We depart for QoNOS in 3 hours. I suggest you prepare yourself. The Klingon High Council does not suffer weakness, and they will test you in ways that physical combat cannot measure. What kind of tests? Honor, Worf said simply. They will seek to understand what you value, what you would die for, what you would kill for. Answer incorrectly, and even your powers will not save you from their judgment. Kal-El stood, feeling the weight of the coming confrontation. Then I'd better figure out what my answers are. Because I have a feeling that whoever I was before the dimensional rift, and whoever I'm becoming now, those answers might be different. As he left the wardroom, heading toward the quarters Sisko had assigned him, Kal-El passed by the brig where Nan remained unconscious in his reinforced cell. The executioner's brutal face was peaceful in forced slumber, but even unconscious, he radiated menace. Odo stood guard outside, his liquid features arranging into something that might have been sympathy. Second thoughts about fighting your own kind? They're not my kind, Kal-El said quietly. We share DNA, but that's where the similarity ends. They're criminals. Murderers. Everything Krypton tried not to be. And you? Odo asked. What are you? Kal-El looked at his reflection in the transparent aluminum of the cell wall. A stranger's face, familiar yet alien, carrying power he still didn't fully understand and responsibilities he never asked for. I'm still figuring that out. But I know one thing for certain, I'm not going to let Zod and Ursa turn this universe into what they wanted Krypton to become. A place where might makes right and the strong prey on the weak without consequence. Then you'd better be stronger than them, Odo said. Because from what I've seen, this universe already has enough people who think their power justifies anything. What it needs are people who think power demands restraint. As Kal-El returned to his quarters to prepare for the journey to QoNOS, he felt memories continuing to surface. Fragments of a red cape, a symbol in red and yellow, a promise made to parents he'd lost twice. Once to Krypton's destruction, and once to dimensional collapse. Superman had stood for something. Truth. Justice. Hope. But in a universe where truth was relative, justice was political, and hope was a luxury in wartime, what did those ideals even mean? He would find out soon enough. The Klingon Empire awaited. And with it General Zod. The USS Defiant emerged from warp at the edge of the QoNOS system, and Kal-El's first glimpse of the Klingon homeworld left him momentarily speechless. The planet hung in space like a wounded warrior, scarred by centuries of industrial exploitation, its atmosphere churning with storms born from ecological damage, its orbital space crowded with warships that looked less like vessels and more like flying fortresses designed for one purpose: destruction. Impressive, is it not? Worf said from the tactical station, a note of pride coloring his usually stern voice. QoNOS has survived conquest attempts from the Hercule, civil wars, and countless challenges to its dominance. The Klingon Empire endures because we embrace conflict rather than fear it. Sisko sat in the command chair, his expression carefully neutral as he reviewed the diplomatic protocols Worf had prepared. Let's hope that philosophy works in our favor. Hail the High Council. Tell them Captain Benjamin Sisko of the Federation Starship Defiant requests an urgent audience regarding a mutual security threat. The view screen flickered to show a Klingon communications officer whose scarred face suggested extensive combat experience. Captain Sisko. Your timing is interesting. Chancellor Gowron is currently dealing with a challenge to his authority. He may not have time for Federation concerns. Worf leaned forward. Tell the Chancellor that Commander Worf, son of Moke, brings warning of a threat greater than any house rivalry. Tell him that beings of immense power have entered Klingon space, and they seek to turn the Empire into a weapon of conquest. The Chancellor will want to hear this. The communications officer's expression shifted to recognition. Worf? The Federation officer who restored House Mocha's honor? He nodded curtly. Stand by. I will relay your message. While they waited, Kal-El stood near the viewport, watching Klingon birds of prey patrol the orbital approach lanes with military precision. His enhanced vision allowed him to see details invisible to normal sensors. The weapon ports constantly tracking potential threats, the battle damage on hulls that hadn't been fully repaired, the alert posture of crews ready for combat at any moment. They're preparing for war, he observed quietly. They are always preparing for war, Worf replied. It is the Klingon way. Peace is merely the interval between conflicts, a time to sharpen blades and strengthen warriors for the next battle. That's exhausting, Kal-El said. And ultimately self-destructive. How do you build a civilization when you're constantly tearing it down through violence? Worf's response was immediate and certain. How do you build warriors worthy of respect when you coddle them with peace? The Federation's philosophy has merit, but it also creates weakness. When the Dominion War began, Starfleet was unprepared for sustained conflict. The Klingon Empire has never known such weakness. Before Kal-El could respond, the view screen shifted to show the interior of the Klingon High Council chamber. Chancellor Gowron sat on the central throne, his distinctive wide-eyed gaze giving him the appearance of barely controlled fury. Around him, the leaders of the great houses stood in postures of aggressive readiness, hands never far from ceremonial weapons that Kal-El suspected were anything but ceremonial. Sisko! Gowron's voice boomed through the speakers. Your message speaks of threats and beings of power. Elaborate quickly, or I will assume this is some Federation ploy to interfere in Klingon affairs during a time of internal restructuring. Sisko stood, projecting calm authority. Chancellor, 3 days ago, beings from another dimension entered our universe through a subspace rupture near the Bajoran wormhole. They possess capabilities beyond anything we've encountered, flight without vessels, invulnerability to conventional weapons, and strength sufficient to tear through starship hulls with their bare hands. They massacred 3,000 civilians at a mining colony to demonstrate their power. One of them is currently heading toward Klingon space. We believe he intends to seize control of your empire. The council chamber erupted in outrage. Klingon voices overlapped in furious denial, insult, and challenge. How dare the Federation suggest that any being could conquer the Empire? What manner of disrespect was this? Gowron silenced them with a gesture. You claim someone seeks to conquer us? Let them try. The Empire has destroyed greater threats than... Chancellor, Worf interrupted, a breach of protocol that caused visible tension in the chamber. With respect, you have not seen what these beings can do. I witnessed one of them survive in open space, withstand multiple phaser strikes, and generate directed energy beams from his eyes capable of melting through station hulls. Our conventional weapons are useless against them. A voice rang out from the assembled houses, deep and resonant with authority. Then you come to us seeking protection? The mighty Federation, cowering behind Klingon strength. The speaker stepped forward. A warrior of impressive size, his armor decorated with honors from countless battles. I am Kovar of House Torg. If these beings are as powerful as you claim, why should we believe you can help us fight them? Sisko gestured to Kal-El, who had been standing just off-screen. Because we brought one. Kal-El stepped into view of the transmission, and the council chamber fell silent. The Klingon stared at him with expressions mixing curiosity, suspicion, and the predatory interest of warriors recognizing potential prey, or a worthy challenge. This is Kal-El, Sisko continued. He possesses the same abilities as the being heading toward your space. But unlike them, he's chosen to stand against his own kind rather than conquer in their name. He fought and defeated one of the criminals despite being significantly weakened. And he's willing to help defend the Klingon Empire from General Zod's ambitions. Gowron leaned forward, his intense gaze fixed on Kal-El through the view screen. You. This Kal-El. Why would you betray your own people to help us? Kal-El met the Chancellor's eyes without flinching. Because they're not my people, Chancellor. They're criminals who destroyed everything my civilization stood for. And because I've seen what happens when beings with godlike power decide that strength justifies tyranny. I won't let that happen here. Not if I can stop it. Pretty words, Kovar sneered. But words are wind. How do we know you're not part of this General Zod's plan? You could be his advance agent, softening us for conquest from within. You don't know. Kal-El admitted. You have no reason to trust me except my actions. I fought to protect Deep Space Nine when I could have joined Nan in attacking it. I'm here warning you when I could be anywhere else in your empire, gathering intelligence or sabotaging defenses. And I'm offering to stand with your warriors against Zod when I could simply hide and wait for the conflict to resolve itself. Worf stepped into frame beside Kal-El. I have fought alongside this man, Chancellor. I have watched him risk death to protect Federation citizens. He carries himself with honor, and I vouch for his intentions. The weight of that statement rippled through the Council. Worf's opinion carried significant influence. He had served on the Enterprise, battled the Borg, and restored his house's honor through combat and sacrifice. His endorsement was not given lightly. Gowron considered this, his expression calculating. Very well. We will grant you audience. Dock at the orbital platform and transport to the Council chambers. But know this, Kal-El, if you prove to be Zod's agent, your death will be legendary in its pain and duration. And you, Worf, will share that fate for bringing deception into the heart of the Empire. Understood, Chancellor, Worf replied without hesitation. We will arrive within the hour. The transmission ended, and Sisko turned to his crew. That went better than I expected. Dax, take us in? Standard docking procedures. O'Brien, monitor all systems. I want us ready for emergency departure if this goes badly. Aye, Captain. Both officers responded in unison. As the Defiant maneuvered toward the orbital platform, Kal-El felt his enhanced senses overwhelmed by the sheer sensory input of Klingon civilization. His hearing picked up 1,000 conversations across the orbital stations, challenges issued, honor debated, battles planned. His vision showed him the architectural brutality of Klingon design, all sharp angles and aggressive aesthetics, every structure built as if expecting imminent attack. And beneath it all, he sensed something else. A presence. Familiar. Dangerous. He's already here, Kal-El said quietly. Sisko turned sharply. What? Zod. I can feel him. Not exactly, it's more like... Kal-El struggled to articulate the sensation. Kryptonians can sense each other's presence when we're close enough. It's something in our biology, a resonance in our cellular structure. He's on the planet. And he's powerful. More powerful than I am right now. Worf's hand moved to his batleth. If he's already made contact with the High Council, then we're walking into a trap. Sisko finished grimly. He activated the ship-wide comm. All hands combat alert status. This may be a diplomatic mission, but we're going in ready for battle. Bashir, prep medical for possible casualties. O'Brien, keep the warp core hot. If we need to make a quick exit, I want it yesterday. The Defiant docked without incident, and the away team assembled in the transporter bay. Sisko, Worf, Kal-El, and a security detachment that everyone knew would be useless if fighting actually broke out. Kal-El had been offered a Starfleet uniform but declined, instead wearing simple dark clothing that Bashir had replicated at his request. If he was going to face Zod, he wanted to do it as himself, not dressed in someone else's authority. Remember, Worf said as they stepped onto the transporter pad. In Klingon culture, shows of weakness are invitations for attack. Stand tall, speak with confidence, and never, never, back down from a challenge. Even if it means fighting. Even if it means dying? Kal-El asked. Especially if it means dying, Worf confirmed. An honorable death is preferable to a coward's life. Your culture is terrifying, Kal-El muttered. Your culture is soft, Worf replied without rancor. We will see which philosophy serves us better in the coming conflict. Energize. They materialized in a vast chamber of dark stone and burning braziers, the air thick with smoke and the scent of blood, whether from ritual sacrifice or recent combat, Kal-El couldn't determine. The High Council sat in elevated positions around a central floor where petitioners and challengers stood to address them. Klingon warriors lined the walls, hands on weapons, eyes tracking the newcomers with predatory focus. And standing before the Chancellor's throne, addressing the Council with a voice that carried absolute authority, was General Zod. He was tall and posing, with a face that combined aristocratic features with military bearing. His black uniform was pristine despite his journey through dimensions, marked with Kryptonian symbols that Kal-El's returning memories recognized as General's insignia. When he turned to face the arriving Federation delegation, his expression showed no surprise, only cold calculation and contempt. Kal-El, Zod said, his voice carrying across the chamber. The son of Jor-El. I had wondered if you survived the dimensional collapse. How unfortunate that you did. Kal-El stepped forward, positioning himself between Zod and the others. Zod. Where's Ursa? Where's Nan? Nan failed in his mission, obviously, since you're standing here. Zod replied dismissively. A predictable outcome. Brute force was always his only strategy. Ursa is attending to other matters. As for me, he gestured to the assembled Klingon with theatrical grandeur. I'm negotiating with these magnificent warriors. Unlike the soft Federation with their rules and restrictions, the Klingon Empire understands that power demands respect. They appreciate strength. They revere conquest. They are, in short, kindred spirits. Gowron rose from his throne, and Kal-El noticed the Chancellor's posture suggested wariness rather than alliance. General Zod has made interesting proposals. He claims he can lead our fleets to victory against the Dominion. That his abilities would make him an unstoppable weapon in our arsenal. And in return? Sisko asked carefully. In return, I require only that the Empire acknowledge my authority and grant me command of sufficient forces to pursue my own objectives, Zod said smoothly. A modest request, given what I offer. I have already demonstrated my capabilities to the Chancellor's satisfaction. Worf's eyes widened. You challenged the Council? Better, Zod smiled. I challenged their greatest warrior to single combat. The victor stands before you. A murmur ran through the assembled Klingon. Kal-El followed their gazes to see a massive warrior seated in the corner, his arm in a crude splint, his face bearing fresh bruises that even Klingon physiology couldn't hide. The warrior's expression mixed shame, rage, and grudging respect. Kall's blood, Worf breathed. That's Martok. He's one of our finest generals. If Zod defeated him... I didn't just defeat him, Zod interrupted. I broke him. Gently. Carefully. Demonstrating absolute superiority while ensuring he survived to testify to my power. Because unlike you, Kal-El, I understand how to use strength effectively. Not as a servant, but as a master. Kal-El felt rage building in his chest. Not the hot fury of impulse, but the cold anger of someone recognizing a fundamental evil. You murdered 3,000 people at Brima Colony. You beat a warrior to prove your dominance. You're trying to turn an entire empire into your personal army. That's not strength, Zod. That's tyranny. Call it what you will, Zod replied. The result is the same. I have power. You have power. The difference is I'm not afraid to use mine. He turned back to Gowron. Chancellor, I believe Kal-El's arrival provides an excellent opportunity for demonstration. He claims I'm a tyrant. I claim I'm simply superior. Let the Empire judge which of us is worthy of their respect. A challenge. Kal-El versus myself. The victor earns the right to speak for all Kryptonians in this universe. The council chamber erupted with approval. Klingon voices roared their endorsement, the prospect of witnessing combat between gods too enticing to resist. Gowron raised his hand for silence, but his expression showed clear interest. This challenge, the Chancellor said slowly. What are its terms? Single combat, Zod declared. No weapons, no assistance, no mercy. We fight until one of us can no longer continue. The victor's word becomes law for both Kryptonians. If I win, Kal-El serves me, or dies. If he wins, I submit to whatever judgment he deems appropriate. Zod's smile was predatory. Though we both know how this will end. I am a trained military commander, a general who has fought wars across star systems. Kal-El is a refugee, a lost child playing at heroism. This will be no contest. Sisko stepped forward. Chancellor, this is exactly what Zod wants. Divide us, create a spectacle, and demonstrate power to intimidate potential opposition. Don't give him that platform. But Gowron was already nodding, the gleam of anticipated glory in his wide eyes. The challenge is accepted. We will witness this combat in the arena of honor. Tomorrow, at sunrise. The Empire will judge which of you deserves our respect, and which deserves only death. Kal-El met Zod's gaze across the chamber, and for the first time since losing his memories, he felt absolute certainty about who he was and what he had to do. Zod represented everything Krypton should have opposed: authoritarian rule, might-making right, power without conscience. If Superman stood for anything, it was the opposite of that philosophy. I accept, Kal-El said quietly. Tomorrow. No mercy. Zod's smile widened. Finally, the son of Jor-El shows some spine. Tomorrow then. And may the best Kryptonian win. As the away team was escorted to guest quarters, Sisko pulled Kal-El aside. You realize this is suicide? You said yourself, he's more powerful than you. I know, Kal-El replied. But what choice do I have? If I refuse, the Klingon will see weakness and ally with Zod anyway. If I fight and lose, at least I bought time for you to develop countermeasures. And if I fight and win... He trailed off, the possibility seeming impossibly remote. If you fight and win, you change the equation for this entire conflict. Sisko finished. You prove that Zod and his kind can be beaten. That gives hope to everyone fighting them. No pressure then, Kal-El said with dark humor. That night, in the guest quarters overlooking the Klingon First City, Kal-El stood at the window and watched the planet's twin moons rise over a skyline of aggressive architecture. Somewhere in this city, Zod was preparing for battle, confident in his superiority, certain of his victory. And Kal-El, weakened, inexperienced, fighting an enemy who had trained for war while Kal-El had trained for what? His memories still wouldn't fully surface. But fragments came. Teaching moments, lessons about using power responsibly, about protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Superman didn't fight for dominance. He fought for protection. And tomorrow, in the arena of honor, he would either prove that philosophy could triumph over tyranny, or die trying. The Klingon Empire, and the fate of the entire quadrant, hung in the balance. Dawn broke over Qonos with the color of dried blood, the twin suns casting crimson light across the first city's brutal skyline. The arena of honor stood at the city's heart, a massive amphitheater carved from volcanic rock, its walls bearing the scorch marks and bloodstains of 10,000 years of ritual combat. Kal-El stood in the preparation chamber beneath the arena floor, listening to the thunder of 70,000 Klingon voices chanting for violence. Worf entered carrying something wrapped in dark cloth. The battle begins in 10 minutes. I brought you this. He unwrapped the bundle to reveal a traditional Klingon warrior's armor, leather and metal, designed for mobility and intimidation rather than actual protection. Kal-El shook his head. I appreciate the gesture, but armor won't help against Zod. And it would only slow me down. It is not about protection, Worf explained. It is about respect. You fight in a Klingon arena, before Klingon witnesses, for Klingon honor. To wear their warrior's garb is to acknowledge their traditions. He paused, then added quietly, And it may be the only thing that prevents them from siding with Zod regardless of the outcome. They need to see you as a warrior, not a Federation puppet. Kal-El considered this, then nodded and began donning the armor. As Worf helped secure the clasps, the Klingon spoke with uncharacteristic gentleness. I have fought many battles, Kal-El, against enemies stronger, faster, and more numerous than myself. I have learned that victory does not always go to the most powerful. Sometimes it goes to the one most willing to endure. Inspiring, Kal-El said dryly, testing the armor's range of motion. Any actual tactical advice? Zod is a general. He thinks strategically, several moves ahead. He will try to control the fight, dictate its pace and direction. Do not let him. Force him to react instead of act. Make him fight your battle, not his own. Worf's hand rested briefly on Kal-El's shoulder. And if you fall, fall with honor. Make your death mean something. I'll try not to die at all, if it's the same to you. A gong sounded, deep, resonant, shaking dust from the ancient stone. The crowd's roar intensified, and a Klingon arena master appeared in the doorway. It is time. The Empire awaits. Kal-El walked through the tunnel toward the arena floor, the sound of 70,000 voices growing louder with each step. When he emerged into the crimson sunlight, the noise became physical force, a wall of bloodlust and anticipation that pressed against him from all sides. Klingon warriors filled every tier of the amphitheater, their weapons raised in salute, their faces twisted in expressions of savage joy. Across the arena floor, Zod emerged from the opposite tunnel. He wore no armor, only the black uniform of a Kryptonian general, immaculate and unstained. His posture radiated absolute confidence as he strode to the center of the arena, arms spread wide to accept the crowd's adulation. Warriors of the Klingon Empire! Zod's voice boomed across the arena without technological amplification, his Kryptonian lungs generating volume that would shame a battleship's speakers. You honor me with your presence! Today, you witness the birth of a new order. Today, you see true power claim its rightful place. Today, the last son of Krypton kneels before his superior, or dies in futile defiance. The crowd erupted. Kal-El felt the weight of their expectation, their hunger for spectacle, their complete indifference to which combatants survived as long as the violence was glorious. Chancellor Gowron stood in the royal box, flanked by the great house leaders. His voice cut through the noise with practiced authority. The terms are set. Single combat. No weapons. No interference. The battle continues until one warrior can no longer fight, yields, or dies. Begin. Zod's smile was cold and predatory. Last words, Kal-El? Perhaps a message for your Federation friends? Kal-El dropped into a fighting stance, not Kryptonian, but something his returning memories provided, a martial discipline from Earth, from a life spent learning to control power rather than unleash it. Just one thing, Zod. You asked why I'd betray my own people. But you're not my people. You're everything Krypton tried to rise above. Everything my father died opposing. Your father was a fool who doomed our world with his warnings and his cowardice. Zod snarled. And you will share his fate. Zod moved, faster than none, faster than anything Kal-El had faced. The distance between them vanished in an eye blink, and Zod's fist connected with Kal-El's jaw with force that could shatter mountains. Kal-El flew backward, his trajectory carrying him into the arena wall with impact that cracked the volcanic stone. The crowd roared approval. Kal-El pulled himself from the crater his body had created, tasting blood. His invulnerability wasn't complete, not at his current power level. Zod was already there, following up with a combination of strikes that drove Kal-El deeper into the wall. Each blow registered as seismic events, shockwaves radiating across the arena floor. You're slow, Zod taunted between strikes. Weak. Pathetic. Is this the great Superman? The symbol of hope? He grabbed Kal-El by the throat, lifting him effortlessly. You're no symbol. You're a cautionary tale about wasted potential. Kal-El's vision blurred, his enhanced healing struggling to keep pace with the damage. But Worf's words echoed in his mind, force him to react instead of act. He stopped trying to break Zod's grip and instead focused his remaining energy into his eyes. Heat vision erupted at point-blank range, striking Zod directly in the face. Zod roared in pain and surprise, dropping Kal-El and staggering back. The heat vision hadn't truly hurt him, his invulnerability was too complete, but the light had momentarily blinded him, forcing a defensive reaction. Kal-El pressed the advantage, driving his shoulder into Zod's midsection and lifting the general off his feet. He accelerated upward, carrying Zod toward the arena's upper tiers before spinning and hurling him back toward the center floor. Zod crashed into the stone hard enough to create a crater 20 meters wide. The crowd's roar shifted, surprise mixing with approval. The underdog had drawn blood, metaphorically if not literally. Zod rose from the crater, his face twisted with fury. "You dare? You dare?" His eyes blazed crimson, and twin beams of concentrated energy lanced across the arena. Kal-El tried to dodge, but Zod tracked his movement with General's precision, the beams searing across Kal-El's ribs, burning through the Klingon armor like tissue paper. Kal-El gasped, the pain overwhelming even his enhanced physiology. Zod's heat vision was more powerful, more focused, backed by decades of combat experience and full solar charge. Kal-El countered with his own heat vision, and the beams met in midair, creating a point of brilliant light that hurt to look at directly. They stood locked in the contest of wills, each trying to overpower the other through sheer force of energy output. The air between them shimmered with heat, the stone floor beneath their feet beginning to melt from the ambient radiation. Sweat poured down Kal-El's face as he poured everything he had into the beam, but Zod's power was greater, his reserves deeper. Slowly, inexorably, Zod's heat vision pushed forward, forcing Kal-El's back toward their source. "This is the difference between us," Zod shouted over the crackling energy. "I embrace my power. I use it without hesitation. You cripple yourself with doubts and morality. That is why you lose. That is why you will always lose." In the royal box, Sisko watched with grim resignation. He's going to lose. Zod is too strong, too experienced. Worf's knuckles were white on the railing. He fights with honor. That is all any warrior can do. But in the guest section reserved for Federation observers, Dr. Bashir was studying the combatants through a medical tricorder he'd smuggled into the arena. His genetically enhanced mind processed the data streams at superhuman speed, and what he saw made him grab Sisko's arm urgently. "Captain, look at the energy readings. Kal-El's cellular output is increasing. Not decreasing, increasing. Every time Zod hits him, every time he takes damage, his body is responding by accelerating its energy absorption rate. It's like an adaptive response to stress." Sisko focused on the arena floor. "Can he actually win?" "I don't know," Bashir admitted. "But he's not beaten yet." On the arena floor, Kal-El felt it too, the change in his cellular structure, the acceleration of power flowing through his body. Zod's attacks were pushing him to his limits, and his Kryptonian physiology was responding the only way it knew how, by becoming stronger to meet the threat. But would it be enough? Zod's heat vision was seconds away from overwhelming his defense, and once that happened, the general would burn through him like a laser through fog. "Think," Kal-El commanded himself. "Zod's a general. He thinks strategically. He's fought wars. But I'm, what? What was I before I became Superman?" Memories surfaced, not of combat, but of Kansas farmland. Of parents who taught him that power meant nothing without compassion. Of a choice to use strength to protect rather than dominate. Of the understanding that sometimes the strongest thing you could do was show restraint. Zod expected him to fight like a warrior, like a Kryptonian general. So Kal-El did the opposite. He shut off his heat vision completely and dropped to the ground, letting Zod's beams pass harmlessly overhead. The sudden lack of resistance threw Zod off balance, his energy discharge continuing for a fraction of a second too long. Kal-El used that moment to close the distance, not with a punch or a strike, but with a grapple, wrapping his arms around Zod's torso and accelerating upward with everything he had. They shot into the sky like a meteor in reverse, breaking through Ursa's atmosphere in seconds. The arena fell away below them, the planet shrinking as Kal-El pushed higher, faster, dragging Zod into the void of space. "What are you doing?" Zod snarled, struggling against the hold. "Changing the battlefield," Kal-El replied through gritted teeth. "You want to fight like a general? Then let's fight where your tactics don't matter. Where there's no ground to hold, no position to defend, no strategy except strength against strength." They broke free of Ursa's gravity well, and Kal-El released Zod with a throwing motion that sent the general tumbling toward Ursa's nearer sun. Zod recovered his orientation, his face twisted with rage, and accelerated back toward Kal-El with murderous intent. The space battle began in earnest. Without gravity, without atmosphere, without any reference points except the distant stars, the combat became pure three-dimensional warfare. They moved at velocities that would have torn lesser beings apart, exchanging blows that created shockwaves visible from the planet's surface. Zod's superior power was matched against Kal-El's growing desperation, and desperation made him creative. When Zod tried to grab him, Kal-El twisted away and used the general's momentum against him, redirecting his flight path toward a Klingon orbital weapons platform. Zod crashed through the station, demolishing it but also disrupting his trajectory. When Zod recovered and unleashed heat vision, Kal-El dove toward the planet, using atmospheric entry to create a plasma sheath that diffused the beams. "Clever," Zod admitted as they fell through Ursa's atmosphere like twin meteors. "But cleverness is not strength. And in the end, strength is all that matters." They impacted the arena floor simultaneously, the double impact creating a shockwave that knocked Klingon from the lower tiers. When the dust cleared, both combatants stood at opposite ends of the arena, battered, bleeding from wounds that even Kryptonian healing couldn't immediately close. The crowd had fallen eerily silent. This was beyond anything they'd expected, beyond the scope of normal combat, beyond the realm of honorable battle. This was something else. This was gods at war. Zod wiped blood from his mouth, and for the first time, his expression showed something other than contempt. "You're stronger than I thought. Jor-El's son has teeth after all. But this ends now." Kal-El's legs trembled with exhaustion, his vision blurring at the edges. Every cell in his body screamed for rest, for recovery time he didn't have. But he forced himself upright, forced himself to meet Zod's gaze without flinching. "You're right," Kal-El said quietly. "This ends now. One way or another." They charged simultaneously, meeting at the arena's center with impact that cracked the stone foundation and sent fracture lines radiating toward the walls. What followed wasn't combat. It was mutual destruction, each fighter abandoning defense in favor of overwhelming offense. Kal-El's fists struck with the force of starship weapons. Zod's blows carried the weight of military conquest. Blood flew, bones cracked, and the arena floor disintegrated beneath them. Kal-El felt his ribs break. Zod's jaw dislocated with a sickening crack. Neither stopped fighting. The crowd watched in horror and fascination as two seemingly invincible beings beat each other toward oblivion. This was Klingon honor taken to its absolute extreme, combat without mercy, without surrender, without any outcome except complete victory or absolute death. Kal-El's vision narrowed to a tunnel. His hearing faded to white noise. But his body kept moving, driven by something deeper than conscious thought, an imperative woven into his very cells that even amnesia couldn't erase. Protect. Serve. Never quit. Zod's next punch should have ended it, a haymaker with enough force to decapitate a lesser being. But Kal-El's adaptive response had been building throughout the battle, his cells learning from each impact, each injury, each moment of stress. When Zod's fist connected, Kal-El's body absorbed the impact differently, redirecting the kinetic energy instead of resisting it. And for the first time in the battle, Kal-El's counterpunch hit harder than Zod's attack. The general's eyes widened in shock as he flew backward, crashing through the arena wall and tumbling across the ground beyond. Kal-El pursued on trembling legs, his body operating on pure instinct now, conscious thought drowned in adrenaline and cellular overdrive. Zod struggled to rise, and for the first time, Kal-El saw genuine uncertainty in the general's face. How? You were weaker. You should have. Should have what? Kal-El gasped, standing over his fallen enemy. Should have known my place? Should have accepted that you're superior? Maybe that's your problem, Zod. You're so convinced of your own supremacy that you can't adapt when reality proves you wrong. He reached down, grabbed Zod by the front of his uniform, and lifted him with the last of his strength. I don't know if I'm Superman anymore. I don't know if I ever was. But I know one thing for certain, I'm not you. I won't ever be you. And I won't let you turn this universe into the nightmare you wanted Krypton to become. Zod's response was to grab Kal-El's wrist and twist, attempting one final reversal. But Kal-El was ready, his borrowed combat instincts predicting the move. He shifted his grip, spun Zod around, and drove the general face first into the ground hard enough to create another crater. Then he knelt on Zod's back, pinning him, and waited for the general to either yield or lose consciousness. The arena held its breath. Zod struggled, his strength still formidable, but Kal-El had positioning and leverage now. Every attempt to rise was countered, every effort to break free was neutralized. Seconds stretched into minutes as the Klingon crowd watched the impossible, the underdog maintaining dominance through technique and will rather than raw power. Finally, Zod's voice emerged, muffled by the ground but carrying across the silent arena. I yield. The words sent shockwaves through the assembled Klingon more powerful than any physical impact. A warrior of Zod's obvious power yielding? Admitting defeat? It was unprecedented. Kal-El released him slowly, warily, ready for treachery. But Zod simply lay there, his body broken not by injury, already healing, but by the undeniable reality of defeat. When he finally sat up, his face carried an expression Kal-El hadn't seen before, respect. You fight well, son of Jor-El, Zod said quietly. Better than I anticipated. Your father would be proud, I think. Kal-El extended his hand, offering to help Zod stand. The general stared at it for a long moment, then accepted the gesture. As they rose together, battered and bleeding but both alive, Chancellor Gowron's voice boomed across the arena. The challenge is complete. Kal-El stands victorious. By the laws of combat, his word becomes law. Speak, Victor. What is your judgment? Every eye in the arena turned to Kal-El. He stood in the center of the destroyed floor, holding up the defeated General Zod, and felt the weight of 70,000 expectations pressing down on him. What he said next would determine everything. Kal-El stood in the shattered arena, every eye fixed upon him, waiting for judgment. His body screamed for rest, his wounds slowly knitting themselves closed through Kryptonian healing, but his mind raced with the implications of this moment. Zod had yielded. The Klingon Empire was watching. And whatever he said next would echo across the quadrant. He looked at Zod, then at Gowron in the royal box, then at the Federation delegation where Sisko watched with barely concealed tension. Finally, he spoke, his voice carrying across the arena with Kryptonian lung capacity. I'm not here to pass judgment. I'm not a judge, and I'm not a conqueror. General Zod committed crimes in Federation space. The massacre at Brima Colony, the attack on the USS Valkyrie. Those crimes demand justice, but not my justice. Federation justice. He turned to Sisko. Captain, I'm formally requesting that Zod be taken into Federation custody to stand trial for his actions. The arena erupted in outrage. Klingon voices overlapped in furious protest. This was their arena, their laws, their right of conquest. How dare the victor surrender his prize to Federation bureaucracy? Gowron raised his hand for silence, his expression unreadable. You won the right to determine Zod's fate. You choose to give him to the Federation rather than execute him here, as honor demands? Honor demands justice, Kal-El replied. Not vengeance. The people Zod killed deserve a trial, evidence, testimony. They deserve to see their murderer answer for his crimes in a court of law, not die in a spectacle. Courts are for the weak. Kovar of House Torg shouted from the council boxes. Warriors settle disputes with blood, not words. You dishonor this arena with your Federation softness. Worf stepped forward from the Federation section, his voice cutting through the protests. Kal-El fought with Klingon honor. He bled in this arena. He defeated a superior opponent through courage and skill. To question his victory is to question the validity of the challenge itself. Are you suggesting the arena of honor lies? That silenced many of the protesters. To challenge the arena's judgment was to challenge Klingon tradition itself, a dangerous position even for a great house leader. Bajoran studied Kal-El with his characteristic intense stare. You are either the wisest warrior I have encountered, or the greatest fool. I have not yet decided which. He stood, and his voice carried the weight of chancellorship. The victor's judgment stands. General Zod will be remanded to Federation custody to face trial for his crimes. But know this, Kal-El, you have made an enemy of those who value strength over law. And you have made a friend of those who recognize that true strength includes restraint. He gestured to his guards. Escort General Zod to the Federation vessel. Ensure his departure is peaceful. As Klingon warriors moved to flank Zod, the general looked at Kal-El with an expression mixing contempt and curiosity. You could have killed me. Should have killed me. Why didn't you? Because I'm not you, Kal-El said simply. And because killing you wouldn't bring back the people at Brima Colony. It would just make me a murderer too. Then you're a fool, Zod said. Mercy is weakness. I showed mercy once, on Krypton, and it cost me everything. I won't make that mistake again. Then I guess we'll see which philosophy survives, Kal-El replied. As the guards led Zod away, Sisko approached Kal-El with something that might have been admiration. That was a hell of a gamble. Half the Klingon Empire probably wants you dead for not executing him. And the other half? Kal-El asked. Probably respect you for it, Worf answered. Klingon value honor above all. You demonstrated both strength and principle. That combination is rare. Before anyone could respond further, a Klingon communications officer rushed into the arena, heading straight for Bajoran. The Chancellor listened to the urgent message, and his expression shifted to alarm. He gestured for silence, then spoke with grim authority. We have just received a distress call from the Kethalolans. A settlement of 2,000 Klingon is under attack. The attacker matches the description of the third Kryptonian, Ursa. Kal-El's blood ran cold. She's here? On QNOS? It appears she followed Zod to the Klingon homeworld. Bajoran confirmed. But rather than approach the capital, she's destroying outlying settlements. The message says. He paused, his jaw tightening. She's demanding that Kal-El face her alone, or she will continue killing civilians. One settlement every hour until he complies. The arena fell silent. Every Klingon understood the tactical brilliance of the move. Ursa had turned Kal-El's victory into a trap. If he went, he would face a fresh opponent, while still weakened from fighting Zod. If he didn't go, she would slaughter innocents and destroy Kal-El's credibility. It's a trap, Sisko said immediately. She watched Zod fight you, knows your capabilities and weaknesses. She's choosing the battlefield, the timing, everything. You'd be walking into an execution. I know, Kal-El replied. But what choice do I have? She's killing people because of me. Every death is my responsibility. No, Worf said firmly. Every death is Ursa's responsibility. She is the killer. You are not obligated to sacrifice yourself for her crimes. Kal-El looked at the Klingon warrior with something approaching gratitude. I appreciate that, Worf. But if I don't go, 2,000 Klingon die in the next hour. Then another 2,000. Then another. How many deaths can I accept before my principles become cowardice? Bashir stepped forward, medical tricorder already scanning Kal-El's condition. You're in no shape to fight. Broken ribs, fractured orbital bone, severe cellular depletion. You need at least 12 hours of recovery time and intensive solar radiation therapy. Fighting Ursa now would be suicide. Then I'll have to be creative, Kal-El said. He turned to Gowron. Chancellor, I need a ship. Something fast, capable of atmospheric flight. And I need someone who knows the Ketha lowlands terrain. You're actually going, Cisco said, disbelief in his voice. I am. Because that's what Superman does. He protects people, even when it's stupid, even when it's impossible, even when it's probably going to kill him. Kal-El managed a weak smile. I'm starting to remember that part of myself pretty clearly. Gowron studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You fight like a Klingon. You bleed like a Klingon. And you make foolishly brave decisions like a Klingon. Very well. I will provide a transport and warriors to accompany you. No warriors, Kal-El said immediately. Ursa specified I come alone. If I bring backup, she'll kill the hostages immediately. Then take equipment, Bashir urged. Let me prepare medical supplies, combat stimulants, anything that might give you an edge. No time, Kal-El replied. Every minute we debate, she's killing people. He looked at the assembled faces, Cisco's tactical concern, Worf's warrior's understanding, Bashir's medical frustration, Gowron's calculating respect. Just get me there. I'll figure out the rest. 20 minutes later, Kal-El stood in a Klingon transport vessel speeding toward the Ketha lowlands. Through the viewport, he watched the Klingon landscape rush past, volcanic mountains, ash plains, settlements built for survival in a hostile environment. His enhanced vision could already see the smoke rising from the target settlement, the destruction visible even from this altitude. The pilot, a scarred veteran named Kaloth, spoke without taking his eyes from the controls. The settlement is 3 minutes out. I am ordered to deliver you and depart immediately. The Chancellor does not wish to give Ursa hostages in the form of my crew. Understood, Kal-El replied. He was running through combat scenarios in his mind, trying to find an advantage that didn't exist. Ursa was fresh, fully charged, and had chosen the battlefield. He was exhausted, depleted, and walking into an ambush. The only question was how badly this was going to go. Why do you do this? Kaloth asked suddenly. You owe the Klingon Empire nothing. These people are not your responsibility. You could flee, hide, recover your strength and fight another day. Why sacrifice yourself for strangers? Kal-El thought about that, and memories surfaced, not complete, but fragments with emotional weight. Parents on a dying world, sending their only child to the stars. Adoptive parents on a farm, teaching values that transcended species and universes. A choice to use power for protection rather than domination. Because if I don't, who will? He said finally. Someone has to stand between the strong and the weak. Someone has to say that power demands responsibility, not privilege. If I can help and don't, then I'm just another person who had the ability to make a difference and chose not to. And I can't live with that. Kaloth grunted, which might have been Klingon for approval. You will die honorably at least. That is more than most achieve. I'll try not to die at all, Kal-El replied. But yeah, if I do, I'll make it count. The transport descended toward the settlement, and Kal-El's enhanced vision resolved the details. Bodies in the streets. Buildings reduced to rubble. And in the center of the devastation, standing atop a pile of debris with her arms crossed, was Ursa. She was tall, severe, with angular features that would have been beautiful if not twisted by cruelty. Her black Kryptonian uniform was immaculate despite the carnage around her, and her posture radiated absolute confidence. When she saw the transport approaching, her smile was like a blade. The transport touched down, and Kal-El stepped out into the ash-choked air. The transport immediately lifted off, leaving him alone on the ground while Ursa floated 10 meters above, looking down with contemptuous amusement. "The last son of Krypton," she said, her voice carrying the same subspace resonance all Kryptonians seemed to generate. "I watched your battle with Zod. Impressive. For an amateur. But Zod always did underestimate his opponents. I make no such mistake." Kal-El scanned the settlement with his vision, counting survivors. Hundreds huddled in basements and reinforced shelters, terrified but alive. Ursa had been precise in her destruction, maximum terror, minimal actual deaths. She wanted leverage, not massacre. Yet. "Let them go," Kal-El said. "This is between us." "Everything is between us," Ursa replied. "We're the last of our kind, Kal-El. The final remnants of a dead civilization. We should be allies, not enemies. Join us. Help Zod rebuild what Krypton should have been. Together, we could rule this universe." "I don't want to rule anything," Kal-El said. "I just want people to be free to live their own lives without beings like you deciding their fate." Ursa's expression shifted to disgust. "Freedom. Such a childish concept. The strong rule. The weak serve. That is the natural order. Your father preached the same idealistic nonsense, and it destroyed Krypton. Will you let it destroy you as well? My father tried to save Krypton by warning them about the coming destruction. Zod tried to save it through military coup. Which one of them showed more courage? The one who acted," Ursa snarled. "Your father talked. Zod did." And if the Council had listened to Zod instead of condemning him, Krypton might still exist. She descended slowly, landing on the ground but maintaining distance. "Last chance, Kal-El. Join us, or die defending these primitives." Kal-El's answer was to launch himself forward, closing the distance with everything he had left. Ursa was ready, sidestepping his charge and delivering a knee strike to his ribs that made his earlier broken bones scream in protest. He gasped, stumbled, and barely blocked her follow-up punch. "Pathetic," Ursa said, circling him like a predator. "Zod softened you up perfectly. You can barely stand, let alone fight. This will be over in seconds." She wasn't wrong. Kal-El could feel his body approaching total failure, his cellular reserves nearly exhausted, his healing factor struggling to keep up with accumulated damage. Every movement sent pain cascading through his nervous system. But he'd fought through pain before. He was starting to remember that too. When Ursa struck again, Kal-El didn't try to block or dodge. Instead, he grabbed her wrist and pulled her forward, using her momentum against her just as he had with Zod. The unexpected move threw her off balance, and Kal-El used that fraction of a second to headbutt her with all his remaining strength. Ursa's nose crunched, blood spraying, and her eyes widened with genuine shock. No one had actually hurt her since she'd arrived in this universe. The surprise cost her another fraction of a second, and Kal-El used it to sweep her legs and drive her to the ground. He tried to pin her as he had Zod, but Ursa was faster, more flexible. She twisted like a serpent, wrapped her legs around his neck, and squeezed with crushing force. Kal-El felt his vision darkening, his windpipe collapsing despite his enhanced physiology. Not like this, he thought desperately. Not when there are still people who need protecting. His hand scrabbled against the ash-covered ground, searching for anything he could use as a weapon. His fingers closed around a piece of metal debris, part of a destroyed building's support structure. It wouldn't hurt Ursa, but maybe. He swung it not at Ursa, but at the ground beside them, using his remaining strength to drive the metal deep into the earth. Then he channeled heat vision into the metal, superheating it, and let go. The metal's thermal expansion created a localized shockwave as the ground flash-heated and exploded. Ursa's grip loosened in surprise, and Kal-El tore free, gasping for air, his throat bruised and swollen. Ursa rose gracefully, brushing ash from her uniform, her expression no longer amused. "Clever. Desperate, but clever. You fight like vermin, using tricks because you lack the power for direct confrontation. I fight smart," Kal-El wheezed. Something you wouldn't understand. Her eyes blazed crimson, and heat vision erupted. Kal-El barely managed to roll aside, the beam searing through the space he'd occupied and melting the ground to glass. He returned fire with his own heat vision, but his beams were weak, flickering, his cellular energy nearly depleted. Ursa walked through his attack like it was a mild inconvenience, and her fist connected with his jaw hard enough to send him tumbling across the settlement square. He crashed through a wall, demolished a storage structure, and finally stopped in a crater of his own creation. "Stay down," Ursa commanded, floating above him. "Accept defeat. I'll make your death quick. Painless, even. More mercy than you deserve." Kal-El tried to stand. Failed. Tried again. His legs wouldn't support his weight, his vision swam with concussion, and every breath felt like inhaling broken glass. This was it. The end. He'd failed. But then he heard something that changed everything. Through the ringing in his ears, through the sound of his own labored breathing, he heard voices. Klingon voices? The settlers, emerging from their hiding places, standing at the edges of the square, watching. They weren't running. They weren't cowering. They were watching. And Kal-El understood something fundamental about Klingon culture in that moment. They valued courage. They respected warriors who fought impossible odds. And they were witnessing a being who could barely stand, refusing to yield against an obviously superior opponent. He was showing them that sometimes, the strongest thing you could do was get back up. So he did. His legs trembled. His vision blurred. Blood dripped from wounds that wouldn't close. But Kal-El stood, raised his fists, and faced Ursa one more time. "Is that it?" he gasped. "That's all you've got?" Ursa's expression shifted to something between respect and fury. "You're insane. You've lost. Your body is broken. Why won't you quit?" "Because they're watching," Kal-El said, gesturing to the Klingon settlers. "And I need them to see that beings with our power can choose to be protectors instead of predators. That strength can serve instead of rule. I need them to see that Superman stands for something." "Superman?" Ursa laughed. "What kind of ridiculous name is that?" "The kind that means something," Kal-El replied. "The kind that represents hope instead of fear. The kind that says no matter how dark things get, someone will stand between the innocent and the darkness. Even if he falls. Even if he dies. Someone has to try." He charged one final time, knowing he couldn't win, knowing this was likely suicide, knowing that his body would fail before he could land a decisive blow. But charging anyway, because that's what Superman did. And as Ursa prepared to end him, something impossible happened. The Klingon settlers charged too. Hundreds of them, armed with makeshift weapons, their faces set in expressions of suicidal determination, rushing toward a being who could kill them with a glance. They couldn't hurt Ursa. They had to know that. But they charged anyway, because they had witnessed true courage, and it demanded response. Ursa stared in shock as the wave of Klingon warriors crashed toward her. "This is madness! I'll kill them all! Then you'll have to go through me first," Kal-El said. And somehow, impossibly, he found the strength for one more attack. Ursa's shock lasted only a fraction of a second before her tactical mind reasserted itself. She could kill every Klingon in the settlement within minutes, but doing so would turn her from potential conqueror into confirmed enemy of the Empire. And even she understood that genocide would unite the fractious Klingon houses against her with a fury that not even Kryptonian power could withstand indefinitely. "Call them off!" she snarled at Kal-El. "Call them off, or I'll demonstrate exactly what happens when primitives challenge a god." Kal-El raised his hand, and miraculously, the Klingon charge slowed. The settlers stopped just meters from Ursa, weapons raised but holding position. Their eyes burned with the light of warriors ready to die gloriously, but they waited for Kal-El's signal. "Stand down," Kal-El commanded, his voice rough but carrying authority. "This isn't your fight. You fought for us," one settler shouted back. an older warrior with scars suggesting a lifetime of combat. "We will not hide while you bleed in our defense. That is not the Klingon way." "Then honor me by staying alive," Kal-El replied. "She wants me, not you. Don't give her an excuse to kill people who have families, who have lives worth living. Sometimes courage means living to fight another day." The settler's jaw tightened, conflict clear on his face, but he slowly lowered his weapon. The others followed his lead, step by reluctant step, backing away from Ursa but maintaining their defensive positions around the square's perimeter. Ursa watched this display with something between contempt and fascination. "You inspire loyalty in them. Impressive. Useless, but impressive. Very well, Kal-El. Let's finish this without the audience interfering. Just you and me, as it should be." She moved with surgical precision, no wasted motion, no dramatic flourishes. Her fist caught Kal-El in the solar plexus, driving the air from his lungs. Her knee struck his already broken ribs, sending fresh fractures radiating through his torso. Her elbow crashed into his temple, and the world tilted sideways. Kal-El fell to one knee, his vision swimming with spots of darkness. His body was shutting down, cellular reserves completely exhausted, healing factor overwhelmed by accumulated trauma. He tried to rise and couldn't. Tried to activate his heat vision, and managed only a flicker of red light. Ursa grabbed his hair, yanking his head back to expose his throat. "Any last words? Perhaps a message for your new Klingon friends?" Through the haze of pain and exhaustion, Kal-El's mind raced. He couldn't win through strength, that was obvious. But Worf had said something earlier, something about forcing Zod to react instead of act. Making him fight your battle, not his own. Ursa wanted to prove her superiority through violence. She expected him to either fight desperately or surrender pathetically. Both outcomes served her narrative, that Kryptonians were superior to all other beings, that might made right, that power demanded submission. So Kal-El gave her either. "You know what the difference is between you and me?" he said, blood trickling from his mouth. "You think power makes you special. I think power makes me responsible. You want to be worshipped. I want to be useful. You need everyone to know you're superior. I just need people to be safe. Philosophy won't save you." Ursa hissed, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of uncertainty. "No, but it might save them." Kal-El gestured weakly toward the Klingon settlers. "You could kill me right now. Prove you're stronger. But then what? The Klingon Empire knows you murdered a defender of their people. Section 31 knows your capabilities and will develop countermeasures. The Federation unites against you. You trade one victory for 1,000 future battles." "I'm not afraid of them," Ursa said, but her grip on his hair loosened slightly. "You should be. Not because they're powerful, they're not compared to you. But because they're numerous, and determined, and they have something you'll never understand. They believe in principles bigger than their own survival. They'll sacrifice themselves for those principles. And you can't kill an idea, Ursa. You can only prove it right by opposing it." Ursa's eyes blazed with crimson energy, heat vision building. "Then I'll start by killing you and see if your precious principles resurrect corpses." "Do it," Kal-El said quietly. "Make me a martyr. Turn me into the symbol that unites this entire quadrant against you and Zod. Because that's what happens when you kill someone standing for something meaningful. You make them immortal." The heat vision flickered, wavered, and died. Ursa released him, and Kal-El collapsed to the ground, barely conscious. She stood over him, her face twisted with conflicting emotions, rage, frustration, and something that might have been respect. "You're either brilliant or insane," she finally said. "Probably both." She looked around at the watching Klingon, at the settlement she'd partially destroyed, at the broader political implications of her next move. "Very well. You win this round, Kal-El." Not through strength, but through manipulating the political landscape. A general's trick, ironically. Zod would appreciate the strategy, even if he despised the restraint. She stepped back, floating above him. But understand this, I'm not surrendering. I'm making a tactical withdrawal. There will be other battles, other settlements, other opportunities to prove that power trumps principle. And next time, you won't be able to talk your way out of defeat. Before anyone could respond, Ursa shot into the sky, accelerating to escape velocity in seconds, becoming a streak of light that vanished into the orbital space above QNOS. Your Kryptonian healing factor has been working overtime, but even by your standards, the damage was extensive. 14 broken bones, severe internal bleeding, cellular energy depletion at 97%. By all rights, you should be dead. Feel like I am. Kal-El croaked, his throat raw. You fought 2 Kryptonians in one day and survived. Bajoran stated, his wide-eyed gaze fixed on Kal-El with something approaching reverence. The Empire has witnessed your courage. Word of your battles has spread throughout Klingon space. The warrior who stood against gods and refused to yield. Songs are already being written about the Battle of Ketha Lowlands. Songs? Kal-El tried to sit up and immediately regretted it, pain lancing through his torso. Klingon battle songs. Worf explained with what might have been amusement. They tend toward the dramatic. You will likely be portrayed as significantly more heroic than reality, but such is the nature of legend. Sisko pulled up a chair, his expression serious. While you were unconscious, the situation has evolved. Zod is in Federation custody, being transported to a maximum security facility for trial. Nan remains imprisoned on DS9. But Ursa has vanished. Our sensors can't locate her anywhere in known space. Section 31 believes she's hiding, regrouping, possibly planning her next move. She's learning, Kal-El said. She watched me fight Zod, saw the tactics that worked. She won't make the same mistakes. He looked at Bashir. Did you get anything useful from analyzing Nan and Zod? Weaknesses we can exploit? Bashir's expression turned uncomfortable. That's complicated. Sloan has been working with the data, and he's developed something. A weapon specifically designed to neutralize Kryptonian physiology. But Kal-El, using it means using your own biology against you. It's red sun radiation. Kal-El finished. You found a way to weaponize it. Yes, Bashir confirmed. Portable generators that emit red dwarf stellar radiation in focus beams. Exposure would temporarily neutralize your powers, making you as vulnerable as any normal humanoid. We could deploy them throughout the fleet, give every starship a fighting chance against Kryptonian attack. Do it, Kal-El said immediately. But it would affect you too, Bashir protested. If Starfleet vessels mistake you for an enemy, or if the weapons are used indiscriminately. Then I'll deal with it, Kal-El interrupted. The safety of this quadrant is more important than my comfort. If red sun radiation can stop Ursa, or any other Kryptonian threats, deploy it. That's an order. You're not in a position to give orders, Sisko pointed out gently. You're not Starfleet, and you're not a citizen of the Federation. Then consider it a strongly worded suggestion from someone who knows what he's talking about, Kal-El amended. Captain, these beings are more dangerous than the Borg, more ruthless than the Dominion. The only reason I've stopped 2 of them is luck and desperation. You need every advantage you can get. Bajoran stepped forward, and his voice carried the weight of chancellorship. The Klingon Empire agrees with Kal-El's assessment. We have witnessed Kryptonian power firsthand. We will work with the Federation to deploy these red sun weapons throughout our combined fleets. And furthermore. He paused, and something shifted in his expression, acknowledgement of a debt rarely given by Klingon leadership. The High Council has voted. Kal-El, you are hereby granted the status of honorary warrior of the Empire. You may call upon Klingon forces in your battles against your renegade kin. We stand with you. Kal-El was too stunned to respond immediately. Worf looked equally surprised. Such honors were almost never granted to non-Klingon, and certainly not to beings whose very existence challenged Klingon supremacy in combat. I'm honored, Chancellor, Kal-El finally managed. But I'm not looking to command armies or lead fleets. I just want to stop Ursa before she hurts more people. Which is precisely why you've earned this honor, Bajoran replied. A warrior who fights for others rather than glory is rare. Treasure that quality, Kal-El. This universe has too few protectors and too many conquerors. As Bajoran departed with his entourage, Sisko pulled up additional data on his PDD. There's more you should know. While you were fighting on QNOS, Major Kira made contact with the Cardassian Provisional Government. They've reported unusual activity near their Badlands territories, energy signatures consistent with Kryptonian physiology. We think Ursa is hiding in the plasma storms, using the radiation to recharge while staying hidden from sensors. Then we go in after her, Kal-El said, starting to remove the medical dressings. You can barely stand, Bashir protested. You need at least another 48 hours of recovery time before you're combat ready. I don't have 48 hours. Every moment Ursa is loose, she's planning, recruiting, or killing. I need to. He stopped mid-sentence, a wave of dizziness forcing him to sit back down. His body was still in no condition for combat, much as he hated to admit it. Sisko made the decision for him. You're staying here. Recovering. Getting your strength back. The Defiant will investigate the Badlands, assess the situation, and if we locate Ursa, we'll contain her until you're ready. But we're not sending you into combat when you can barely walk. Captain. That's an order, Kal-El. Or a strongly worded suggestion if you prefer. Sisko's expression softened slightly. You've done enough. You beat Nan, fought Zod to a standstill, and survived Ursa through pure guts. Let us handle the reconnaissance. When it's time to fight again, we'll bring you in. But not before you're ready. Kal-El wanted to argue but recognized the futility. Sisko was right. Going after Ursa in his current condition would be suicide. Fine. But keep me updated on everything. And Captain? Be careful. Ursa is more dangerous than Nan and Zod combined because she's patient. She'll wait for the perfect opportunity to strike. After Sisko and Worf departed, leaving Bashir to monitor his recovery, Kal-El stared at the ceiling of the Klingon medical facility and tried to process everything that had happened. In less than a week, he'd gone from an amnesiac prisoner suspected of being a Dominion spy to an honorary warrior of the Klingon Empire, and the Federation's best hope against superhuman threats. His memories were returning more each day. Fragments of Krypton, clearer images of Earth, a symbol in red and yellow that meant hope. But the memories felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. The person he was becoming in this universe, shaped by Federation principles, Klingon honor codes, and the brutal reality of war, felt different from the Superman he remembered being. Maybe that was inevitable. Different universe, different challenges, different version of heroism required. Penny for your thoughts, Bashir said, setting down his tricorder. Or whatever the Kryptonian equivalent is. Just wondering who I'm becoming, Kal-El admitted. The Superman I remember stood for truth, justice, and the American way. But there's no America here. No Earth even. So what do I stand for now? Bashir considered this carefully. Perhaps that's the wrong question. Instead of asking what you stand for, ask what you stand against. You've opposed tyranny. You've protected the innocent. You've demonstrated that power can serve rather than dominate. Those principles transcend any single universe or culture. They're universal precisely because they're based on something fundamental, the recognition that sentient beings deserve freedom, dignity, and protection from those who would harm them. That sounds like something Captain Picard would say, Kal-El observed. I may have been reading his published essays on Federation philosophy, Bashir admitted with a slight smile. But the point stands. You don't need to remember everything about who you were to understand who you're becoming. Sometimes the best version of ourselves emerges when we're forced to rebuild from scratch. Before Kal-El could respond, alarms erupted throughout the medical facility. A Klingon officer rushed in, his expression urgent. We have received a priority transmission from Deep Space Nine. The station is under attack. Multiple hostiles, Kryptonian energy signatures detected. They're requesting immediate assistance. Kal-El was on his feet before conscious thought engaged, adrenaline overriding pain and exhaustion. How many? Who's attacking? The message was fragmentary before communications cut out, the officer reported. But the last transmission identified the attackers as General Zod and a force of Kryptonian soldiers. Somehow, he's escaped Federation custody and assembled an army. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Zod had been in maximum security transport. Breaking free would have been nearly impossible. Unless it was a rescue, Bashir said, his enhanced mind reaching the conclusion first. Ursa didn't flee to the Badlands to hide. She went there to recruit. To find other Kryptonians who might have come through the dimensional rupture. And then she freed Zod. Kal-El's hands clenched into fists. How many Kryptonians are we talking about? Unknown. But if even a dozen beings with your capabilities attack DS9 simultaneously. The officer didn't need to finish the thought. The Klingon bird of prey tore through space at maximum warp, its engines screaming in protest as Kal-El pushed the vessel beyond recommended safety margins. Through the viewport, the stars stretched into lines of light, and somewhere ahead, still hours away at current speed, Deep Space Nine fought for survival against impossible odds. Kal-El stood at the helm, his hands gripping the controls despite his injuries, his enhanced hearing picking up the subspace distress signals even through the static of warp travel. Explosions. Screams. The distinctive sound of hull breaches and decompressing compartments. And underneath it all, a voice he recognized, Major Kira, coordinating defense with the desperate efficiency of someone who'd fought hopeless battles before. All hands, fall back to secondary positions. Sealed bulkheads on decks 4 through 7. Civilian evacuation protocols are in effect. Get everyone to the core sections and... The transmission dissolved into static, then reformed. They're everywhere. Phasers aren't even slowing them down. We need... silence. Kal-El's jaw tightened. He was still 3 hours away. 3 hours during which Zod's forces would tear through the station's defenses, slaughter its crew, and seize control of the wormhole. Unless something changed the equation. Behind him, Bashir worked frantically at the science station, monitoring Kal-El's biosigns while coordinating with the medical team they'd brought from QNOS. Your cellular energy is at 23% and still climbing. The bird of prey's engines are generating enough ambient radiation to accelerate your recovery, but you're still nowhere near full capacity. If you engage Zod in your current state... I know, Kal-El interrupted. I'll lose. But I'm all they've got right now. The Defiant is days away in the Badlands, and Starfleet reinforcements won't arrive in time. It's me or nothing. Then let's make sure you're as charged as possible before you get there, Bashir said, pulling up engineering schematics on his display. These bird of prey use a matter/antimatter reactor similar to Federation designs. If we could divert some of that energy, channel it through the deflector array like we did on DS9, we'd turn the ship into a mobile solar radiation emitter. Kal-El finished, understanding immediately. How long to reconfigure? 40 minutes, maybe less. But it would drain our shields completely, and reduce our warp speed by 30%. We'd arrive later, but you'd be significantly more charged. Kal-El did the mental calculation, arrive weaker but sooner, or arrive stronger but risk the station falling before he got there. It was the kind of impossible choice he was learning to recognize as typical for this universe. No perfect options, only terrible ones and slightly less terrible ones. Do it, he decided. An extra half hour won't matter if I'm too weak to make a difference when I arrive. As Bashir coordinated with the Klingon engineering crew, who seemed both fascinated and horrified by the Federation doctor's modifications to their vessel, Kal-El accessed the communications station and opened a subspace channel to DS9. The signal was weak, degraded by distance and interference, but he managed to establish a connection. This is Kal-El to Deep Space Nine. Anyone reading? Static. Then, faintly, a voice emerged. Odo, his tone strained but controlled. Kal-El. We read you. Your timing is unfortunate. The station is under siege by 9 Kryptonian hostiles. General Zod leads them. They've breached our outer hull in 14 locations, neutralized weapons arrays, and are systematically working through our defensive positions. 9 working together, led by Zod's military genius, would be unstoppable. Where did they come from? He asked. Unknown. Best hypothesis is they were scattered across the quadrant when the dimensional rupture occurred, and Ursa spent the past days locating and recruiting them. They appeared via stolen Klingon vessels approximately 90 minutes ago, abandoned the ships in orbit, and assaulted the station directly through space. Odo paused, and when he spoke again, there was something in his voice that might have been admiration. They're not destroying the station. They're conquering it. Room by room, deck by deck. Zod wants DS9 intact. Because he wants the wormhole. Kal-El said. Access to the Gamma Quadrant means unlimited resources, potential allies, entire civilizations he could subjugate or recruit. Odo, you need to collapse the wormhole. Permanently. We've considered that. Odo replied. But the Bajorans would never forgive us. The wormhole is sacred to them. Destroying it would be cultural genocide. And frankly, even if we tried, I'm not certain we could before Zod's forces seized ops and prevented it. Through the channel, Kal-El heard explosions, phaser fire, and the distinctive sound of Kryptonian heat vision cutting through bulkheads. Someone screamed. The transmission wavered. Odo, listen to me, Kal-El said urgently. I'm 3 hours out. I know that's an eternity in your situation, but I need you to hold. Keep them away from ops, keep them away from the wormhole controls, and stay alive until I get there. Can you do that? We'll try, Odo said, which was probably the most optimistic answer Kal-El could expect from the pragmatic shapeshifter. But Kal-El, even if you arrive in time, 9 of them versus you? Those odds are suicide. Yeah, Kal-El acknowledged. But I'm getting used to suicide odds. Just hold on. I'm coming. The transmission ended, and Kal-El returned his focus to piloting as Bashir's modifications came online. The Bird of Prey's engines began channeling energy through the reconfigured deflector array, bathing the bridge in golden light that Kal-El's cells drank like water in a desert. He felt his power returning, not fully, not to maximum capacity, but enough to make the coming fight survivable. Maybe. The hours crawled past with agonizing slowness. Bashir provided updates on the station's status through intercepted transmissions and sensor sweeps. The news was uniformly bad. Zod's forces had seized decks 8 through 12. Civilian casualties exceeded 300. Starfleet security teams were being systematically eliminated. Major Kira had retreated to ops with the remaining senior staff and established a final defensive perimeter, but it was only a matter of time before Zod breached even that stronghold. We're getting fragmentary reports about the Kryptonian forces, Bashir said, reviewing intelligence data. They're not all soldiers like Zod. Some appear to be civilians, scientists, administrators, people who are in the Phantom Zone for nonviolent crimes. They're following Zod because he's the ranking military authority, and because they're terrified. This universe is as alien to them as it is to you. That doesn't make them less dangerous. Kal-El replied. Fear makes people do terrible things. And Zod knows exactly how to exploit that fear. When the Bird of Prey finally dropped out of warp at the edge of the Bajoran system, the view screen revealed devastation. DS9 hung in space like a wounded beast, sections venting atmosphere, entire pylons dark and lifeless. Klingon and Cardassian wreckage orbited nearby, reinforcements that had arrived too late and been destroyed by beings who could survive in vacuum and tear through starship hulls with their bare hands. Sensors show 9 Kryptonian signatures, Bashir reported grimly. All concentrated in the station's ops section. Life signs throughout DS9 are minimal. The station's crew has been reduced by 70%. The Kryptonians have won, Kal-El. They control the station. Kal-El stared at the wounded structure, feeling rage and guilt warring in his chest. He'd been too slow. Too weak. Too far away. People had died while he flew through space, helpless to prevent the massacre. "Hail the station," he commanded. "Let Zod know I'm here." Bashir complied, and the view screen shifted to show ops, or what remained of it. The normally orderly command center was a disaster area. Consoles sparked with damage. Bodies lay motionless in corners. And seated in the commander's chair, looking completely at ease, was General Zod. The other 8 Kryptonians stood around him in a defensive formation. Kal-El recognized Ursa immediately, her expression triumphant. Nam was there too, somehow freed from the brig, looking freshly healed and eager for revenge. The others were strangers, their faces showing varying degrees of fear, determination, and fanatical devotion to Zod. "Kal-El," Zod greeted him with mock warmth. "How delightful that you could join us. I was beginning to think you'd abandoned your Federation friends to their fate." "Let them go, Zod," Kal-El said, forcing calm into his voice. "The civilians, the crew, everyone you're holding. This is between us." "Is it?" Zod gestured to the devastation around him. "I thought this was about the future of our species. About whether the last Kryptonians would spend eternity scattered and powerless, or united and supreme. You chose to stand with primitives against your own kind. Now you reap the consequences of that choice." On a side screen, Kal-El could see the surviving senior staff, Kira, Odo, Dax, Bashir's image from the Bird of Prey, and others, bound and under guard by Kryptonian soldiers. They were alive, but for how long? "What do you want?" Kal-El asked, though he already knew the answer. "Kneel," Zod said simply. "Publicly acknowledge my authority as Supreme Commander of all Kryptonians in this universe. Serve me as you should have from the beginning. Do this, and I'll spare the lives of everyone on this station. Refuse, and I'll execute them one by one while you watch, starting with your friend, the shapeshifter." Ursa moved to stand behind Odo, her hand resting on his shoulder with casual menace. "We've been testing the limits of changeling physiology. Did you know they can survive being pulled apart at the molecular level? Fascinating. And painful, from what we can determine." Kal-El felt something cold settle in his chest. This was the ultimate trap: surrender and become Zod's weapon, or resist and watch innocent people die. There was no clever strategy, no tactical maneuver that could save everyone. Just an impossible choice. "You have 1 minute to decide," Zod said, checking a chronometer with theatrical precision. "After that, people start dying. Tick-tock, son of Jor-El." Kal-El looked at the faces of the DS9 crew. Kira met his eyes, and even bound and defeated, her expression carried defiance. She shook her head minutely. "Don't surrender. Don't give him what he wants. Better to die free than live as slaves." But could Kal-El live with that? Could he stand by and watch people die when surrender might save them? 30 seconds, Zod announced. Bashir's voice came through the private channel, desperate. "Kal-El, whatever you're thinking, don't. We'll find another way. We always find another way." But there was no other way. Not this time. The equation was brutally simple: submit or watch massacres. 15 seconds. Kal-El closed his eyes, searching for an answer in the fragments of memory and the emerging sense of who Superman was meant to be. Truth. Justice. Hope. Principles worth dying for. But were they worth letting others die for? 10 seconds. And then, cutting through his paralysis, a memory surfaced, not from Krypton or Earth, but from QNOS. From the arena of honor. From the moment he'd faced Zod and refused to execute him despite having earned that right. "You could have killed me. Should have killed me. Why didn't you? Because I'm not you. And because killing you wouldn't bring back the people at Prime Colony. It would just make me a murderer too." He'd shown mercy then because he believed in something bigger than revenge or expedience. He believed that how you fought mattered as much as whether you won. That principles weren't just guidelines for easy times. They were especially important during impossible choices. Superman didn't compromise on core values. Not even to save lives. Because the moment he did, he became everything he opposed. 5 seconds. Kal-El opened his eyes and looked directly at Zod through the view screen. No. Zod's expression didn't change. No. No. Kal-El repeated. I won't kneel. I won't serve you. I won't give you the legitimacy you're seeking. You want to kill these people? Then you'll have to live with being a murderer. But I won't help you pretend your tyranny has moral authority. Then you've killed them, Zod said coldly. He nodded to Ursa. Begin with the shapeshifter. Ursa grabbed Odo's arm, her grip compressing his liquid form with crushing force. Odo gasped, his body beginning to destabilize, molecules scattering under the pressure. And Kal-El did the only thing he could. He charged. The bird of prey's transporters locked onto his signature and beamed him directly into Ops, materializing him between Ursa and Odo in the fraction of a second before she could complete the killing strike. His hand caught her wrist, and his heat vision erupted at point-blank range, striking her directly in the face with enough concentrated energy to force her backward. Enough! Kal-El roared, his voice carrying such power that every Kryptonian in the room felt it. You want me, Zod? Come and get me. But leave them out of this. What followed was chaos. 9 Kryptonians converged on Kal-El simultaneously, their combined strength enough to level cities. He met their assault with everything he had, fists, heat vision, improvised tactics, and sheer desperate fury. The room exploded into violence that no structure could contain. Kal-El grabbed Nan and used him as a battering ram against 2 other attackers. He dodged Ursa's heat vision and redirected it into a console, causing an explosion that scattered the Kryptonians momentarily. He fought with the tactical brilliance of someone who'd spent hours absorbing solar radiation and the desperate creativity of someone who knew he couldn't win. But there were too many. For every blow he landed, 3 struck him in return. His ribs, barely healed from the previous battles, fractured again. His vision blurred from repeated head trauma. His cellular energy depleted faster than he could regenerate it. And through it all, Zod watched from the commander's chair, studying Kal-El's techniques, analyzing his strategies, waiting for the perfect moment to personally end this rebellion. Kal-El crashed through a bulkhead, tumbled into the adjoining corridor, and struggled to rise. Blood poured from his nose, his ears, wounds that even Kryptonian healing couldn't close. The 9 Kryptonians followed him through the breach, forming a circle around him like predators surrounding wounded prey. Admirable, Zod said, finally standing and approaching through the devastation. Futile, but admirable. You fought 9 opponents simultaneously and survived longer than I anticipated. But this ends now, Kal-El, kneel or die. Those are your only options. Kal-El looked up at Zod through blood-crusted eyes. Every muscle screamed. Every cell begged for rest. But his voice, when it came, was steady. Then I die. Because Superman doesn't kneel to tyrants. Zod's eyes blazed crimson, heat vision building to execution-level intensity. And in that moment, something impossible happened. The station's lights flickered, then shifted to an eerie red glow. And every Kryptonian in the corridor gasped as their power vanished. Through the emergency lighting, Kal-El saw Bashir's face on a nearby view screen, his expression grim but determined. Red sun generators are now active throughout the station. Every corridor, every room, every open space is bathed in red dwarf radiation. You're all human now. All of you. Zod stared at his hands in horror, feeling mortality for the first time in years. Around him, the other Kryptonians reacted with varying degrees of panic. Some tried to fly and fell, some attempted heat vision and produced nothing, some simply stood frozen in shock. No, Zod whispered. No, this is impossible. You can't. We can. Kira's voice came through the comm system, and Kal-El saw her on another screen, somehow freed from her bonds and holding a phaser. And we have. Bashir installed red sun generators throughout the station while you were focused on Kal-El. Every Kryptonian on DS9 is now powerless. And we're taking our station back. Starfleet security teams emerged from hidden positions, phasers trained on the depowered Kryptonians. The tables had turned completely. Zod looked at Kal-El, who was also powerless, also mortal, also vulnerable. For the first time, they stood on equal ground, not as gods, but as men. Clever, Zod admitted. You sacrificed your own power to neutralize ours. That's surprisingly tactical. Perhaps Jor-El's son has some military aptitude after all. Kal-El struggled to his feet, his body protesting every movement but no longer superhuman. Just a man. Injured, exhausted, mortal. But standing. It's over, Zod. You've lost. Surrender, and you'll get the fair trial I promised. Fight, and we'll subdue you by force. Your choice. For a long moment, Zod considered his options. Then, slowly, he raised his hands in surrender. I yield. For now. But understand, Kal-El, this war isn't over. It's only just beginning. You've won a battle. But the war for this universe's future will last decades. And in the end, power will triumph over principle. It always does. We'll see. Kal-El replied. We'll see. As Starfleet security moved in to secure the Kryptonians, as medical teams rushed to treat the wounded, as DS9 began the long process of recovery, Kal-El stood in the red-lit corridor and felt something shift in his understanding. He'd won. Not through superior strength, but through sacrifice and strategy. Not by being the most powerful, but by being willing to give up power to save lives. That was what Superman meant. Not invincibility, but responsibility. Not dominance, but service. Not conquest, but protection. The Dominion War still raged. The Federation faced threats on every border. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, other dangers waited. But for now, for this moment, Deep Space Nine was safe. And Kal-El, Superman, had found his purpose in this strange new universe. To stand between the darkness and the light. To protect those who couldn't protect themselves. To prove that power without conscience was tyranny, but power with purpose could save worlds. The trial of General Zod and his followers became the most closely watched legal proceeding in Federation history. Broadcast across the quadrant, it served not as mere justice for the Brima colony massacre, but as a referendum on the fundamental question, what rights do beings of godlike power possess, and what responsibilities do they bear? Kal-El testified, his words carrying the weight of someone who'd walked both sides of that equation. The Federation judges sentenced Zod and his criminal followers to imprisonment in a specially designed facility, a space station positioned near a red dwarf star, bathing them in radiation that kept them perpetually human, perpetually vulnerable, perpetually reminded that power was privilege, not right. But not all the Kryptonians were condemned. Those who'd followed Zod out of fear rather than conviction, those who'd committed no crimes beyond seeking survival in an alien universe, were offered something unprecedented: sanctuary. The Federation, in cooperation with the Klingon Empire and even reluctant participation from the Cardassians, established a colony for displaced Kryptonians, a world orbiting a yellow sun, where they could rebuild their civilization under observation and with strict oversight. Kal-El chose not to join them. His place, he realized, was between universes, belonging fully to neither his Kryptonian heritage nor his adopted Federation principles, but finding strength in that liminal space. He became something unique, a protector operating across factional boundaries, answering to no government but guided by principles that transcended political authority. When the Dominion War finally ended in bloody stalemate, Kal-El was there, pulling survivors from wreckage and preventing atrocities on both sides. When temporal anomalies threatened to unravel the timeline, he stood with Starfleet Temporal Investigations, his unique physiology proving resistant to chronotin radiation. When the board returned with adaptive strategies designed to counter Kryptonian abilities, he worked alongside Voyager's crew to find solutions that protected rather than destroyed. The symbol he'd chosen, a stylized S in red and yellow, representing hope in a language from a universe that no longer existed, became recognized across the quadrant. Not as a mark of Federation authority or Klingon honor, but as something else entirely. A promise that someone was watching. That power could serve instead of dominate. That even in the darkest conflicts, someone would stand for principles bigger than survival. Dr. Bashir continued studying Kryptonian physiology, his research leading to breakthroughs in cellular regeneration that saved millions. Worf wrote extensively about the honor found in restraint, his essays becoming required reading at Starfleet Academy. Major Kira, haunted by the casualties at DS9, nevertheless acknowledged that Kal-El's sacrifice, surrendering his power to save lives, embodied the best of what sentient beings could become. And Deep Space Nine, rebuilt and reinforced, stood as a monument to the day when gods learned they could bleed, and mortals proved that courage mattered more than power. Kal-El still didn't have all his memories back. The Superman of Earth, with his daily planet and his metropolis and his Lois Lane, remained partially obscured behind dimensional barriers and neural trauma. But perhaps that was for the best. He wasn't that Superman anymore. He was something new, forged in the fires of the Dominion War, tempered by Klingon honor, refined by Federation principles, and strengthened by the understanding that power meant nothing without purpose. When asked what he stood for now, in this universe of complex morality and impossible choices, Kal-El's answer was simple. When asked what he stood for now, in this universe of complex morality and impossible choices, Kal-El's answer was simple. I stand for those who can't stand for themselves. I fight for those who can't fight back. And I believe that no matter how dark the universe gets, hope is worth defending. Because the moment we stop believing things can be better, we've already lost. The stars held infinite dangers. But they also held infinite possibilities. And somewhere among them, wearing a symbol that meant hope, Superman watched over a universe that desperately needed to believe that power could be good, that strength could serve, and that even in the darkest times, someone would stand up and say, "Not on my watch!" Live long and prosper. Hit that subscribe button for more interesting stories.